Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Ian is back today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
It is good to have you back. Not
Thank
that
you.
David didn't do a great job, but it is always good to have you back on our program. So I really thought I was going to start today off not talking about Sam Darnold. I really thought that, which, by the way, let me say, nothing is confirmed. In fact, it's very far from confirmed. But Sam Darnold may be coming on the show next week at the Super Bowl. We don't know yet. Again, just at this point, a possibility. But I want to start on this today because I have angered so many people, and I have heard the yelling and the screaming and the complaining about, again, my opinion that if Mike Borgonzi wants the Titans to be the Kansas City Chiefs the way that they built those Chief teams, if that's what Mike Borgonzi wants, then what Mike Borgonzi needs to do is he needs to trade for Sam Darnold to be their Alex Smith. And again, when it came to Alex Smith was 2 second-round picks, including the 34th pick in the 2013 draft. That's when Andy Reid got to Kansas City. And again, 2 second-rounders for Alex Smith. And the next thing you know, they had, as Mike Borgonzi said, solidified the quarterback position. Well, I'm not going to trade 2 second-round picks for Sam Darnold, but I believe Minnesota, knowing that Darnold is the only guy who could be out there, is going to franchise tag him. Now, they may keep him after they franchise tag him, but what is more likely is they're going to try to recoup some value, and they'll franchise tag him. So I've said the 35th pick in the draft. No, Jared. Oh, God, no. Oh, no, we can't do that. We need picks. Pick. Oh, no. Oh, no. Darnold's fine, but we want better. You know, it's like bringing Tannehill back. Yes, it is. It's like bringing a 28-year-old Tannehill in here to be the quarterback for a couple of years so you can figure out the rest of the team. And then one day go get your quarterback. Oh, no. But Charles Robinson was on with Robbie and Joe this morning, and Robbie asked Charles what he thinks the latest surrounding the Vikings and Sam Darnold may be.
From the Minnesota perspective, what do you think the plan is for next year at quarterback? Like, is it as simple as Darnold's back? They won 14 games with him last year. He's the guy. Like, is Darnold on a short leash and they're going with McCarthy at the first sign of trouble? Like, how do you view that, and how realistic do you think it is that Darnold could be attainable for the Titans or anyone else this offseason?
Well, if you know, yeah, we've talked about him. We've talked about him repeatedly, but I think things changed so much the last 2 games of the season for him. Whereas, look, if you'd asked me, you know, first week of December, second week of December, I was definitely saying, hey, he's not going anywhere. Like, absolutely. They're at least franchising him. He will be back in 2025.
So, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that the last 2 weeks have changed everything? The last 2 weeks, those 2 terrible games, we all saw them. Detroit in the last game of the year to determine the number 1 seed in the NFC, and the Rams in that game in Arizona in the wild card round, that now Minnesota might let Sam Darnold go. Charles followed it up by saying, look, if Minnesota ends up with Sam Darnold back after those last 2 games, they want them on Minnesota's terms.
When you watch the postseason press conferences with Kevin O'Connell and the GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, they were very much leaving the door open to not having Sam Darnold in 2025. I still think part of this comes down to price. I think the Vikings are sitting there, and if they could have Sam Darnold back on a quote unquote value contract, let's say it's like $35 million AAV, and they only have to give him 2 years of guaranteed money, I think they'd think long and hard about that, because they would look at, okay, it's really a 2-year deal. We're totally fine, developing JJ McCarthy for another 2 years. And we did get top level, play out of Sam for the vast majority of this year. We just know now we really got to make sure we tune up that offensive line. We really got to make sure we have a better running back. Yes, he's got, great skill position pieces, but running back and offensive line are two things that we have to focus on this offseason. I think if they feel like they could get him at 35.
Oh, if they could get him at 35, maybe they'd do it. But when it comes to Sam Darnold and it comes to the Vikings and they may let him go. So it sounds like the Vikings want Sam Darnold back, kind of maybe, but on their terms. So here's my question for everybody. If that's the case and Sam Darnold is getting to free agency, how would you feel about the Titans just paying money in order to get Sam Darnold in here to be the quarterback? Because personally, I think I'd be willing to pay more money in order to get Sam Darnold in as the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans when it's just money. You get to keep the 35th pick. To me, that's the best of both worlds. You don't have to draft a quarterback this year, Ward or Sanders. You could draft Ward if you really liked him but thought he needed to be on the bench. You could draft him to develop him if you sign Sam. But more importantly, you've got the number 1 pick. You can draft Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, trade back if you want, if somebody's willing to move up. Make the trade back, keep the 35th pick, draft a tackle, draft an edge rusher, draft a receiver, just draft the best player on the board. Some of you guys out here that don't understand the value of football players might like run stuffing DT with that pick. But again, you get to keep 35. Now, would there be a bidding war? I think the Raiders would be involved. Maybe the Giants would be involved. It's very tricky about the Giants and Sam Darnold because Sam Darnold would fit their biggest need, which is quarterback. But at the same time, he's already been in New York before. And it didn't work, and New York's vicious, and maybe he wouldn't even want to go back to, I don't know. But for me, I would love the idea of the Titans signing Sam Darnold to a 4-year, $168 million a year contract, or $1 year, $168 million contract. That's about 42 a year. 80 million guaranteed. That's essentially 2 years guaranteed for Darnold. Now, I'm not going to give him a no-trade clause, and I'm not going to give him the right to avoid the franchise tag. Those are non-negotiables for me. Because, again, if I sign Sam Darnold to a 4-year contract, and by year 3, I am just enamored with somebody in the draft, and I think that's my future, and I can pull the Alex Smith, the Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to do it. But, again, 4 years, $42 million a year, $80 million guaranteed, and I might be willing to up the guaranteed money a little bit. But now you get to keep. You get to keep the 35th pick. So my question is for all of you, because I have no problem with trading the 35th pick in the draft. None. Zero. In order to get the quarterback situation figured out. But what if you didn't have to? What if Minnesota really was turned off by those last 2 games? That Minnesota thought, we might have a franchise quarterback. Those 2 games happened, and now they're like, yeah, not a franchise quarterback. Let's go with JJ. Let's risk our jobs. Let's go with JJ. Does that change your mind as far as Sam Darnold is concerned? 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of quarterbacks and who's available and who's not, there is another quarterback that apparently is entering the discussion. And I guarantee you, Titan fans are going to think, woo, what about this guy on the Titans? Well, as the great Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
Meanwhile, there's other deals that eventually are going to have to come together here in terms of the futures of certain starting quarterbacks. One of them in L.A., Ian, what do we know?
Yeah, let's talk about Matthew Stafford. Last we heard from Stafford, he was in his postseason press conference talking about how he wanted to take some time and ponder his future. Sean McVay saying he would like an answer sooner rather than later. My understanding is Matthew Stafford does, in fact, plan to play next season. This is essentially what he sort of communicated to the Rams. Wanted to take some time off and basically told them, I feel good. I don't see why I wouldn't play. My understanding, again, plans to play. Now, that is not exactly the whole story for the Rams because he's due $27 million next year, not guaranteed on his contract. I have a hard time imagining Matthew Stafford plays for that. But last year before training camp, also right at the buzzer, they got a deal done. I believe it ended up being a 1-year, $40 million deal. I would imagine they would have to look at his contract again. But for Stafford, who, is like a young 37 and certainly still got the arm, one of the best arms in the NFL, him expected to be back is a very good sign for this Rams team that looks like it is really, really coming on.
Okay, that was Ian Rappaport yesterday talking about Matthew Stafford and the Rams. And I woke up this morning and I heard Robbie and Joe, and they were talking about Matthew Stafford and the Rams, which I was a little surprised by. And then I saw that Pro Football Talk this morning was talking about Matthew Stafford and the Rams. And now all of a sudden the text line's already, what about Matthew Stafford? I heard the midday show talking about Matthew Stafford. So somebody help me out here. Where did this Matthew Stafford is available stuff come from? Like, I need somebody to explain this to me. Because, again, the way I look at this in the NFL is there are teams that have quarterbacks and there are teams that do not have quarterbacks. The Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Cleveland Browns do not have quarterbacks. Now, granted, we know there's about 7 franchise quarterbacks in the NFL where teams would not move off their quarterback no matter how many number 1 picks you offered. Washington's not moving off Jaden Daniels. So there's Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, Daniels, Stroud, and I'd throw Herbert into the mix because that's how I think they view it. And then there are teams that have quarterbacks, but they're not for sure slam dunk, superstar, carry the team guys. But the teams that have quarterbacks, like Arizona and Kyler Murray, they're not just going to get rid of Kyler Murray for no reason. That's their quarterback. They don't have another quarterback. So where is this Matthew Stafford Rams thing coming from? Well, Matthew Stafford. So let me just put this to bed because, again, I can't tell you what's going on between Stafford and the Rams. My guess is, and I just looked up Stafford's contract, Stafford's due $23 million in base salary next year. When the going rate for Trevor Lawrence is $55 million, Matthew Stafford's probably not playing for 26. So that's probably the issue, is that Matthew Stafford probably looks around the league, even though he's 37, and he just went toe-to-toe in the snow with the NFC champions. And Matthew Stafford's probably saying, look, man, I'm closer to $50 million than I am to $26 million. In fact, I'm probably closer to $60 million than I am to $26 million. So you need to pay up. And the Rams will undoubtedly pay up in the end. Matthew Stafford will be the Rams quarterback. But let's just live in fantasy world for a second. And let's just say that Matthew Stafford and the Rams can't come to an agreement, and the Rams say, Matthew's been a great 37-year-old for us, but it's time for us to move on, and we're going to move on to Jimmy G, and so now the door's open, and we're entertaining trade offers. You think a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford is going to play for the 3-win Titans? 99% of the time, when the team stinks, and the team stinks right now, but 99% of the time when the team stinks, fans think nobody wants to play for the Titans. Why would anyone want to be head coach of the Titans? Why would anyone want to be GM of the Titans? Why would anyone want to play for the Titans? And the answer is the same almost every time. The money. Why does Calvin Ridley want to come to the Titans? Titans suck. Why did Calvin Ridley want to come to the Titans? The money. Why did Tony Pollard want to leave Dallas where everybody in America watched him play every single week, to come to the Titans? The answer? The money. But there's one thing Matthew Stafford doesn't need. Not to say that I'm pocket watching, and not to say that he wouldn't like an extra $40 million in the bank. But Matthew Stafford has made $364 million in his career. I believe that might be close to the most all time. $364 million. So Matthew Stafford, who spent years and years and years getting battered and beaten on those terrible teams in Detroit, finally had enough and went to the Lions and said, guys, enough's enough. Time for me to go somewhere else. The Lions, with sympathy in their hearts, said, we got it. Let's find somewhere else for you to go. They trade him to the Rams. He wins a Super Bowl with the Rams. He's the starting quarterback with the Rams. He's going to go to the 3-win Titans. He's going to sign up for what 5 years ago he had to get away from. There's no shot of that happening. Anything other than you giving him ownership equity in the team, he's not coming here. There is no reason for that to happen. Matthew Stafford will retire before he plays for the Tennessee Titans. Sam Darnold does not have $364 million in the bank. Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward don't have $364 million in the bank. So there is no threat of them not wanting to be with the Titans. Matthew Stafford, there's a real threat there. And I would just venture to guess that Matthew Stafford is probably playing for the Rams next year, or he's retiring, and that there's probably no ifs, ands, or buts. Again, at 37 years old, you think he wants to go to a new coach? You think he wants to learn a new terminology? You think he wants to play with new receivers? You think he wants to uproot his family and move into a new house? You don't want to do any of that. So, again, this is like Aaron Donald for a couple of years, when Aaron Donald was unhappy with his contract and he would threaten to retire. And so then the Rams would have to pony up more money every time for it. That's what this is. What about Matthew Stafford to the Titans, Jared? Matthew Stafford's not coming to the Titans. And then, again, I keep getting back at this. This is the same thing I ask every time somebody brings up Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr is on a bad team, and Derek Carr is injured. So it's a little different. Derek Carr's team's getting a new coach. Derek Carr was not 1 inch away from the NFC Championship game, which Matthew Stafford was. But if New Orleans were to trade Derek Carr, or New Orleans were to release Derek Carr, which makes no sense, by the way, but if they were to do this, who's going to be their quarterback? Jake Haener? Spencer Rattler? Mac Jones? Kellen Moore will be the head coach of the Saints. Is he going to bring Kenny Pickett with him? Who's going to be the starting quarterback? So they're not going to let Derek Carr go. Now let's talk about the Rams. The Rams have had a renaissance. They won the Super Bowl, but because they went all in for the Super Bowl, they had no draft picks. Traded them all for Von Miller and Matthew Stafford and Jalen Ramsey. So they had no draft picks for years. They had a year where everybody got injured. They were terrible, but they didn't have their draft pick because they gave it to the Lions. So they get themselves out of it. They made the playoffs each of the last 2 years. Aaron Donald retires. They replace Aaron Donald with the best defensive rookie in the game, Jared Verse, and they add in Braden Fisk, who, unlike Devondre Sweat, plays defensive tackle and gets after the quarterback. So the LA Rams, with Sean McVay coaching, and they are paying him a fortune, with Puka Nacua as a number 1 wide receiver, with a defense that is legit. They got hot at the end of the year last year. The Rams improved throughout the course of the year. Who are they going to run out there at quarterback if they let Matthew Stafford go? And again, Matthew Stafford is under contract for the Rams. So he doesn't have an opt-out here. He can retire. That's his only leverage. But who's going to be the quarterback of the Rams if Matthew Stafford ends up going somewhere else? Nobody. There's nobody for them to get. What, you think they're going to draft Cam Ward? Yeah, We were right there with Philadelphia. We gave up 200 yards rushing, and we still had a chance to win the game. We were right there in a snowstorm against Philly. We smoked Minnesota. We've gone toe-to-toe with the entire NFC. We know the Rams are not like the Titans where Amy, went freaking crazy and fired John Robinson really out of thin air. The Rams don't do that. The Rams understand how the NFL works. The Rams are probably looking at this saying, hey, just as we were a Jaquiski Tart dropped Matthew Stafford interception away from not winning our only Super Bowl, we're right there. So they're going to put Jimmy G at quarterback? They're going to sign Mac Jones to be quarterback? They're going to sign Daniel Jones to be quarterback? Again, like I said, the Rams aren't the Titans. The Rams aren't stupid. The Rams are not an organization. Even though McVay is a great offensive coach, and he knows it, the Rams are not an organization that thinks, oh, we'll just make Daniel Jones great. The way Josh McDaniels ran off Jay Cutler and told the entire team, I could turn any high school starter into an all-pro. Yeah, McVay doesn't think that way. McVay's smart. So before you hear the headline, Stafford is available. Number one, no, he's not. He is going to be the quarterback of the LA Rams. Ian, am I allowed to guarantee this?
What, that Stafford goes back to the Rams?
Yes.
Sure. I'll allow
Because
it.
when Stafford goes back to the Rams, everyone's going to say, well, no, duh, he was going back to the Rams. But right now, there are people texting into this show saying, what about Stafford to the Titans? Dun, 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 dun. I guarantee Matthew Stafford is the 2025 starting quarterback for the LA Rams. Put it down. But I can also tell you this. If Stafford isn't the quarterback for the Rams, he is not coming to the 3-win Titans. Like, come on now. With $364 million in the bank, he is not coming to the Titans and playing on a team with PT at right tackle. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phone, 615-737-1025. Plus, one thing the media, a lot of you will be very happy about this. One thing the media absolutely does not think when it comes to the Titans and their quarterback situation. We'll do it next. I'm going to Company 105 The Game. in your opinion, is Sam Darnold better right now than Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders will ever become?
I can't say that he's better than they will ever become. I can say that the floor for Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are unknown right now, because what they did well in college won't necessarily translate well into the NFL. For example, Cam Ward made a lot of boneheaded, head scratching decisions in games that contributed to them falling behind by 2 scores or more in the second half multiple times this last year at Miami. And then he had brilliant comebacks multiple times and led them to victory. Well, will those boneheaded decisions be so easily overcome in the NFL with brilliance that he showed against ACC teams, mostly in college? And then Shedeur, he is a guy that needs to get the ball out more quickly.
That was Trevor Maddich on our show talking about, right now, Darnold is ahead of those guys. Will he always be there? Trevor doesn't know. That's part of the job for Mike Borgonzi and his staff to figure out is, like, right now, is Sam Darnold a better quarterback than these guys? Remember, in 2013, when the Chiefs traded for Alex Smith, did Alex Smith end up being a better quarterback in perpetuity than E.J. Manuel, the first quarterback drafted? Yes. Was he a better quarterback in Kansas City than Geno Smith has been with the Jets in Seattle? Yes. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. So if that's the case, then you find a way to get Darnold and you don't worry about the other two. But I think some Titan fans will be very happy to know that both The Athletic and ESPN have destinations for Sam Darnold, the possible places Darnold may end up. And in neither case do ESPN nor The Athletic include the Titans as a potential destination. They include the Raiders, which, by the way, ESPN had a piece a couple weeks ago where league executives thought Sam Darnold would end up with the Raiders. They include the Raiders, the Steelers, even the Giants. And they all include a return to the Vikings. But none of them include the Titans. Now, maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they just assume that the Titans are going to draft Cam Ward or they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders with the number 1 pick. Although the betting favorite right now to go number 1 is Travis Hunter. I don't know. Maybe. But I do find it fascinating that, again, not the most plugged in places, and the Titans, as it's been well documented, are not a team that garners a lot of attention. But the Titans need a quarterback. Sam Darnold's out there. The best player in the draft, according to everybody, is not a quarterback. The Titans have the best pick, and yet there's no thought at The Athletic or at ESPN that Sam Darnold could be with the Titans. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jared in Spring Hill has been waiting patiently and is going to kick us off today. Thank you for calling. Jared, go ahead.
So, Stillman, hey, and I know both of these guys are under contract, and I know you love Darnold, but, the reasons outside of, money that you noted for why Stafford wouldn't come here could also apply to Darnold. And I know there's some confirmation bias you're trying to prove and push, and I know you love Darnold. However,
Darnold doesn't have $364 million in the bank.
Okay, so if it's just about money, all right, how much is the Tennessee tax to get Darnold compared to anywhere else? Because, again, both these guys are under contract. All of this is just, hyperbolic at this point in time. So, I mean,
well, Darnold's not under contract, technically. Darnold could be tagged, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So what would be if it's about money, right? How much would the Tennessee tax would it be to get Darnold to stay here, to come here to Tennessee versus like staying in Minnesota? Because I don't know what the franchise tag would be for him. And, at that, because I personally, don't want to give up a second rounder because you would have one pick in the top 100 this year, right? So you'd only draft number 1 overall, and your next pick would be 101, right? Is that how that would go?
Well, my biggest issue with that then is who's going to play quarterback.
Well, yeah, true. I know, I get it, but I was just saying, later on the draft, I just don't know because I would be much willing to give him money. Like you said, it ain't my money. Spend.
So I'm going to hit all these things
would-
that you just asked about. Number one, thank you for your call. Number one, I think there is no comparison between Sam Darnold and Matthew Stafford. I mean, Sam Darnold is still trying to establish himself and his career in the NFL. Sam Darnold is not done. And again, the teams that would have interest in Darnold, it's not like the teams that would have interest in Darnold, and maybe there's a wild card team out there that would be like, whoa, could you believe this team had interest in Sam Darnold? Maybe that exists. But the teams that would really be out there for Sam Darnold are all the teams that suck. The Raiders stink. The Giants stink. The Titans stink. Again, the Jets don't have a quarterback. I don't think they'll be interested in Darnold because of the history. And the Browns stink and they don't really have a quarterback, but they're paying Deshaun $46 million. And I don't think they want to pay $80 million at the quarterback position. Though the Browns, who knows? So the question then has to be, like, Darnold's not retiring. So his options will be limited in the same way your options are limited. Stafford, like I think Stafford is either the quarterback of the Rams or he's retiring. I don't think Matthew Stafford is interested in going to some Scarbini team. There is a massive difference between the two. There's a massive difference in the amount of money these guys have made. I mean, again, Sam Darnold made $4 million 2 years ago and made $10 million last year. That's $14 million over the last 2 years, including $4 million in California. Which, again, not to be after taxes guy, but after taxes, well, you know what I mean. Again, Matthew Stafford's made $364 million. There's a huge difference there. Now, again, I understand if you were to trade the 35th pick for Darnold, that you'd only have one pick in the top 100. Now, you could trade back out of number one if somebody's willing to tango, and you'd have more picks, but I get the premise. I guess I'm just of the belief that you get the quarterback done. You know, I've heard Colin Cowherd say this, and I actually am now starting to realize the truth in it. Because there's a lot of people out there that want to win the deal at quarterback. It's like, well, I can get Fields for $8 million or $11 million, or I could get Darnold for $40 million. I'll take Fields at $11 million because it's a better deal. Right, but Fields has 14 career wins over 4 years. Darnold had 14 wins last year. And what Colin Cowherd says is never go cheap on toilet paper, transportation, or quarterbacks. Don't go cheap with the car you're trying to buy. Don't go cheap with the toilet paper you wipe your tush with. And let me say this, I wholeheartedly agree with that one. And do not go cheap at quarterback. I'd rather overpay at quarterback and be done at quarterback than underpay and get into week 4 and say, holy crap, we suck. Again, I didn't have a problem with trying Will Levis out at quarterback. I had a problem with signing Mason Rudolph as the backup because I knew he sucked. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, I heard something today that I was a little surprised by. I'm not going to lie. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Tune into 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders take on New Mexico State at the Murphy Center. Tip-off is at 6:30 with the pregame beginning at 6. Coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. And meanwhile, let's give away a pair of tickets, or, let's give away a pair of tickets to Belmont women's basketball while we're at it. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see the Belmont women's basketball team take on Murray State at the Fisher Center this Saturday with tip-off at 4 o'clock. So enjoy that. So I was listening to Charles Robinson on Robbie and Rexroad. And look, it's the funny season with draft stuff, and people are speculating. And, it could be a scout or a personnel director or somebody who doesn't have a lot of juice that is throwing out this idea. But it was listening to them talk about kind of the different quarterbacks in the draft. We all know Sanders. We all know Ward. But he kept talking about Jackson Dart and what he's hearing about where the Ole Miss quarterback might go in the draft.
Quickly, get a follow-up on Jackson Dart. Are you suggesting that he's so popular that he could be, Bo Nix and sneak into the first round all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Dart's got the potential for it. And I thought it before the Senior Bowl started because I knew, okay, Milroe and Dart, these are two guys that when you start to talk to personnel people and you're like, okay, let's get past Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Is there anybody else that, is there any ability for quarterbacks to potentially move themselves in the process? And Milroe and Dart were the two guys that immediately had, guys that were like, yeah.
Okay. He's saying he thinks Jackson Dart could play himself into the first round the way that Bo Nix did. Now, I'll be the first to say I haven't done a lot of research on Jackson Dart. Haven't watched a lot of tape on Jackson Dart. All I know about Jackson Dart is I watched Ole Miss games this year. Now, I did not walk away from those thinking, wow. But I did have a college coach tell me that, hey, the guy he likes in the draft, Jackson Dart and Will Howard. Now, the second part, the Jalen Milroe stuff, I'm sorry. Maybe Jalen Milroe becomes the next Lamar Jackson. And in the first half of the Georgia game, Jalen Hurts looked like Lamar Jackson. Actually, that's Jalen Hurts. Jalen Milroe looked like Lamar Jackson. But Jalen Milroe sucked this year. He sucked in the second half of the Georgia game. He was awful against Vanderbilt. You can't lose to Vanderbilt. We already tried that. The Titans took a quarterback. Will Levis lost to Vanderbilt. We saw what happened. Milroe lost to Vandy. Milroe was awful against UT. Milroe was horrible in the bowl game. I'm sorry, but Jalen Milroe stinks. And so I'm not going to talk myself into Milroe. I am not going to talk myself at all into Milroe. Dart, that, again, I'd have to watch tape on Dart. I'd have to hear more. What it sounds like to me when it comes to Jackson Dart is that there are a lot of teams that are worried that Jackson Dart is a product of Lane Kiffin's gimmicky offense, which makes total sense. But at the same time, a lot of people were worried about Patrick Mahomes in the gimmicky air raid offense at Texas Tech. And the one thing I will say, Jackson Dart did beat good teams this year. He did beat Georgia. You can't say that about Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. He did beat South Carolina. Again, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward didn't beat anybody this year. So at least he has that going for him. But I heard first round and I was like, oh my goodness gracious. One texter says, Andrew says, 75 more days of crazy quarterback scenarios just for everyone to see Sanders or Ward in a Titans jersey. It is time to accept it and move on, folks. So let me say this. We will know if the Titans are going to draft one of the two quarterbacks, which, again, it sounds like the only one that's worth that pick is Ward. Now, TD will be on the show at 4 o'clock from the Senior Bowl, and I know TD thinks Shedeur Sanders is worth that pick. But, again, a lot of the draft folks are saying, Ward would be the guy that they would take with the first pick. We'll know based off of what the Titans do in free agency / the trade market when the new league year begins. So it's not even 75 days. It's really 6 weeks. Because on March 13th or whatever day it is, that is the start of the new league year, that's when you'll know. We will know by Selection Sunday what the Titans are going to do as far as the quarterback position is concerned. At least one way or another. We won't know if it's going to be Ward or Sanders, but we'll know it's going to be drafted. One texter says, you are assuming the premise that Sam Darnold comes in here and doesn't play like a total bozo, which is absurd because we've seen it from Sam Darnold. Saying done at the quarterback position with Sam Darnold is no sure thing. First of all, saying done at the quarterback position with anybody is technically no sure thing. I mean, I don't know about you. I thought the Broncos were done at quarterback when they acquired Russell Wilson. I thought the Jets were done at quarterback when they acquired Aaron Rodgers. So, again, there's no guarantee on any of this. But when the Titans signed Ryan Tannehill to an extension, they were done at quarterback for then. They weren't done forever, but at that point in time, they were done. They weren't going to be drafting Jordan Love once they signed Ryan Tannehill to that extension. That's what Sam Darnold is. And again, a lot of people, for some reason, have a hard time understanding this. No matter how many times I bring this up, this seems to always get lost in translation. And ask Gentry Estes at the Tennessean, because he'll tell you. Sam Darnold did not suck that second year in Carolina. The first year started off okay and then kind of tanked it out. But the second year, Sam Darnold was 2-4 with a football team that Baker Mayfield went 1-5 with. The exact same team. Well, the head coach got fired. Okay. But Sam Darnold was not a bozo in 2022. He and DJ Moore got the Panthers back into the divisional race, going 4-2 at the end of the season. I mean, one game, they lost. Darnold played great. But Tom Brady and Mike Evans went nuts. But again, he was 4-2, had a higher QBR than Aaron Rodgers. Was the backup in San Francisco last year. There wasn't really anything taken away from that. Won 14 games last year. So it's been 4 years since we've seen Sam Darnold absolutely suck on a consistent basis. I'd say those days are in the rearview mirror. I'm not saying it's a guarantee that he won't revert to the Jets, Sam Darnold, but he was with the Jets 6 years ago. Come on now. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025. So I have accepted that the Predators stink. I thought they were going to be good this year. They are terrible. I have accepted it. I have accepted that they're not going to make the playoffs. I have accepted that they're not going to fire the coach. I have accepted that they're probably going to run it back with mostly the same crew next year and expect different results. And I don't have a problem with almost any of that. But there is one thing about this team that is really starting to piss me off. And there is one thing about this team that at this point, I don't think there's a single solution for. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, and presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Predators fell last night 3-1, really 2-1 with an empty netter against the Vancouver Canucks in a very late game, 8 o'clock. Maybe this is probably the whole thing of having a 6-week-old, well, I guess now 7 weeks old yesterday. Having a 7-week-old is... Man, 8 o'clock is a late game for me. Like, I'm just going to say. But last night they got beat by the Vancouver Canucks. And if there was any hope of salvaging the season, I think the last two, Anaheim on Saturday night, losing to that horrible Anaheim team, and then losing at home last night against Vancouver, probably seals the deal. I mean, I know a lot got made out of Barry Trotz on the show on Tuesday, talking about if they could climb their way out of this, he'll go reinforce the team a little bit for a playoff run. And people on Twitter went crazy, but that was never going to happen anyways. But it's over. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I expected much better out of the Predators this year. I expected a team that was going to contend for the Cup. I expected a team that was going to get hot out of the gates, was going to be comfortably in the playoffs for pretty much the entire season. And then we'd see once you get to the second round of the playoffs. Instead, it is more likely that they get the number one pick than it is that they do anything else of note. They stink. On the nights they score, they don't play any defense, and they give up a bunch of goals to Anaheim. On the nights they don't give up a bunch of goals, they don't score, like last night. This season is over, and it's not what I expected. And yet at the same time, I'm not yelling and screaming the way I was yelling and screaming when it came to the Titans. I'm fine with it. I've accepted it. Again, it's not what I expected, but I've accepted the realities of this season. They thought those old pawpaws could come in here and that they could mesh right away and play in this system and all work out together, and it didn't happen. But here's what I don't like when it comes to the Predators. And here's what's really starting to piss me off. And that is the goalie. I'm just going to tell it like it is because I am sick and tired of the excuses that this organization makes for this goalie. Barry Trotz was on the show on Tuesday, and I started it off saying Barry. First of all, Barry Trotz's been on the show every Tuesday for the last 2 years. And during the offseason, whenever something happens, Barry comes on the show. And I have said to Barry Trotz, I would not extend the goalie. He extended the goalie. When he did it, I said, because again, I want to be fair. I read you guys in the text line saying, you're not hard on Barry Trotz because he comes on the show, but you're hard on Rand because I am an equal, again, all I care about is being fair. And so I tell Barry Trotz when he comes on, I said, I would not have given the goalie that contract. But yet Barry Trotz on our show on Tuesday, I said, look, are you worried about the fact that this goalie keeps losing games, that this goalie save percentage is .899. The line of demarcation for me is 900. If you do not save 90% of the shots you face, you suck. And he is at .899. He leads the league in losses. He's given up 6 goals or whatever it is at Anaheim. And I asked Barry Trotz, I said, are you worried about the goalie? Here's excuse number 8,000 of the Predators over the years talking about Juuse Saros.
Well, I look at the goalie's play. I thought Saros was outstanding at the start of the year, and we weren't scoring for him. We were giving up unbelievably high danger chances. Our scoring, we're scoring. I think we're one of the highest scoring teams since the turn of the new year. But we're also giving up the most, and it's as much as it is on the pressure on our goaltender. I think we're giving up a lot of high danger chances. Our defense has gotten a lot younger. They're a lot more offensive minded, trying to add to the offense, and we're trading chances. We're becoming a little bit more high event than I would like, but at the same time, we're trying different things with our defense. So I'm not worried. I mean, a lot of people were saying, what was wrong with Philip Forsberg? He didn't score for 18 games, and then now he's scoring almost at a goal a game pace. So goalies, players, they're going to go through good stretches and bad. And I think Juuse is just fine. He's too good of a goaltender. He's been an elite goaltender, him and Hellebuck, for a long time here. So I'm not that worried as you. I think play of your team and play of your goaltender go hand in hand, and there's parts of our game that we can clean up, and there's parts of his game that he can clean up as well. So I think it goes hand in hand. He's too good at his craft to I'm not as worried as you are.
I'm sorry. What do these people see that I don't? Because I hear, well, it's really about the play of the team. You can't blame the goalie. So, it's really more the team than it is the goalie. So then why did I give the goalie 8 years? If the goalie's not that important, which, again, I believe was part of my argument this summer when I said, do not pay the goalie. I believe part of it was, I don't think goalies are that important. Because I see nobody Scarbini in net for the Vegas Golden Knights and they win the cup. I see, who was that? Pavel Francos. What's his last name?
Francois.
The bozo from Colorado. They win the cup. It doesn't matter. And no, Jared, you don't understand. You've got to have an elite goaltender. Elite goalies do not lead the NHL in losses. It should be noted, Juuse Saros also leads the league in overtime losses. And every time we talk about the fact that Juuse Saros does not live up to expectations, what I feel like is consistently he does not live up to expectations. When it really matters, he does not pull the team through. And yet, every time this discussion comes up, it's never his fault. It is never his fault. Again, he's got an .899 save percentage. That's awful. Well, yeah, but last night you can't blame him. They only gave up 2 goals. When's he going to go out there and pitch a shutout in a game that they got to have? Oh, you can't blame Saros. Barry Trotz is sitting there saying, at the beginning of the year, Saros was playing great. We weren't scoring any goals. Now we're scoring a bunch of goals, and you're still losing. Why am I not allowed to blame Juuse Saros? Is it because he's been given the golden contract and he turned around right after being given the keys to the franchise? And he's just turned around, and again, I don't think he's the number one problem. But he's certainly on the list of reasons why your season has been an unmitigated disaster. And here's the worst part about all of this. When it comes to people like me and Caroline and Robbie and Ian, was Joe on our side or was he on your side last year?
I think he was on the side move on from Saros.
Okay, so even bad take Joe was on our side with this. When it comes to us, if we're right, me and Caroline and Robbie and Joe, if we were right that they should have never given Saros that contract, well, now guess what? Even if we are right, there's nothing they can do about it. The decision was made. It was the decision that I would not have made. And it's a decision that now they can't do anything about. So when it comes to Trotz and when it comes to, hey, Jared, you're not hard on them. You're not. I'm just going to say it like this. If Juuse Saros continues to stink, and again, leading the league in losses, stink, .899 save percentage, stink, Barry Trotz is not going to survive that contract. I'm just telling you right now, if they don't figure it out, whether it's Mitch Korn, who they've brought in to be the team's goalie advisory or whatever, Pecorine's on the staff, if they do not figure it out, Barry Trotz will not be able to get his way out of that contract, and he will not survive it. The coach absolutely won't survive. If they start off poorly next year, the coach is gone. But I'm just calling it how it is, which is my biggest fear, was that the Nashville Predators stuck their head up their rear ends when it came to this goalie after he failed to produce in the playoffs again last year. And everybody in Predatorland put their hands over their ears, la, 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 every time you brought up the fact that, A, goalies don't matter that much anymore. They just don't. B, Saros never wins in the playoffs. And every time you bring that up, it's, well, but the team in front of them wasn't it? La, 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 hands over the ears every time. They don't want to hear it. UC Saros couldn't beat the Arizona Coyotes in a play-in to the playoff series. And Arizona doesn't even have a team anymore. He has never won a playoff series. And again, if we're talking about an elite goaltender, because every time Willie and Chris Mason and Trotz, and anytime these people go up there talk about Saros, it's always, he's elite, he's great, he's awesome, you people don't understand, he's the best, blah, blah, blah. Every single time. If you're really an elite goaltender, you don't blow a 2-goal lead in the last 2 minutes of Game 4 of the playoff series against Vancouver last year. But again, this is UC Saros land, where UC Saros, anything he does, it's never his fault. Well, I shouldn't say anything he does. Anything he doesn't do, it's never his fault around here. It's always, we didn't play well in front of him. Well, isn't that why he's paid the money? Is so if they don't play well in front of him, he still blocks the shots? Peter Laviolette said something years ago that has resonated with me forever, which is, you know what the key to a great penalty kill is? A good goalie. Where's Saros? I mean, I'm sorry. I am sorry. But I've seen elite goaltending with the Nashville Predators, and so have you. I've seen Pekka Rinne steal series against the number 1 seed in the Western Conference playoffs before. I've seen Pekka Rinne carry this team to the Stanley Cup final. I've seen Pekka Rinne in that 2011 series against Vancouver give it absolutely everything that he had when the team was just completely outclassed on the ice. And yet, they took that team right to the wire because Rinne was unstoppable. So I know what elite goaltending is. I don't have the experience of Barry Trotz. I didn't play the game like Chris Mason. But I call it like I see it. UC Saros is an above-average goalie. That's it. And an above-average goalie is not worth tying yourself to like an anchor, which is what that contract's going to be, an anchor holding everything down. You are stuck with him. You are stuck with his .899 save percentage. You are stuck with the fact that this year he's allowing 2.86 goals a game, which is up significantly from the 2.69 2 years ago. Again, last year, blew Game 4 in the Vancouver series. And I go back to the beginning of this year when things just completely went off the rails. And I kept saying to myself, if this goalie's so good, why has he not kept all these losing streaks they had? Why has he not stopped those losing streaks from happening? And by the way, it should be noted, until Pekka really started to fall off there at the end, though I would have given Pekka a shot in the bubble series, they didn't. But there was never really a question. In 2017, 2018, there really was never a question of who's better, Rinne or Saros. But if you go back to it, we've had those discussions. Who's better, Saros or Kevin Lankinen? Who's better? Right now, this backup goalie they got from Colorado, Juuse, whatever, he's playing better than Saros. That shouldn't happen if you're an elite franchise goalie. So, again, I'm not upset that this team stinks. I'm not. I understand it's a lost season. Next year, regroup, training camp, and if it doesn't, then blow it all up. Or blow up whatever you can blow up, I guess. Fire the coach, do different, whatever. I'm fine. I'm fine with them getting the number 1 pick and keeping the coach next year and giving it a go. I've accepted it. I'm not upset about it. I don't think people should lose their jobs over it. I'm not. But what I am not accepting of is a franchise elite goalie who we can never hold accountable, we can never blame for anything, and has an .899 save percentage. But Jared, it's the guys in front of him. Then let's pay the guys in front of him and not pay him. There, I had to get that out. I had to get that off my chest. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Your thoughts. 615-737-1025. And Ian, I have a question for you on this. Can never blame the goalie. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Still playing 5-on-5 as the puck comes over to the right half wall. Juuse knocked down, and the puck goes into the empty net from Juuse. And the Canucks take a 2-goal lead with 17.3 to go.
Well, in fairness, that one's not Saros' fault because the net was empty, but another loss added to UC Saros' season-leading tally in the NHL. He also leads the league in overtime losses as well, as it should be noted. So, Ian Safar, I'm going to put you on the hot seat right now.
Okay.
You were part of the Boohoo Saros crew with Willie and Derek, and I forget where Chase and Big Joe lied on all of this. But Vengen, Robbie, Joe, Caroline, Jared, all out after the Vancouver series on Saros, said deal the goalie and move on to Yaroslav Askarov down the road. Do you regret voting for that referendum this past offseason?
No, not yet.
Would you still want to sign him to the contract? Let's say they didn't sign him to the contract in the offseason, but they did trade Askarov.
They did trade Askarov. Okay.
Would you be in favor of signing him to the contract given what we've seen so far this season?
Probably. Yeah.
Based off of what?
Who else is going to be your goalie?
It doesn't matter. Juuse, I don't even know this guy's name, and he's the backup goalie. Juuse, what's his last name?
Yeah, silent J, double Juice, Juicy number 2, Justus Annunen.
Justus Annunen. Again, I like him. I'm just like this little goalie from Colorado. I like.
He's big.
Justus Annunen. He's playing the same. I will tell you right now. And again, I know that it's easy in hindsight to say. Every coach and every general manager will say it's easy to say in hindsight, but I do feel like it was well documented on this station how people felt. How much better would you be right now if you didn't have the constant $8 million commitment that's coming down the pipe to Saros with the full no move, with Kevin Lankinen as your starting goalie and Yaroslav Askarov as your backup?
I don't know, but you said they already moved Askarov. That wasn't part of the conversation.
I actually should take that back because the Askarov move was made after the Saros deal. So Askarov's still there.
Askarov is still here?
Yes.
I don't know. Hard to say. You know, Askarov wants to start. He doesn't want to be the backup.
Well, I actually think he was kind of okay with the idea of being the backup, but when they signed Scott Wedgwood, it was obvious he wasn't going to be the backup.
Well, I don't know.
He just wanted to be in the NHL. If they had re-signed, if they had traded Juuse Saros, and I don't think the return for Saros would have been what we had even talked about. I think it would have been less because goalies aren't that important in the league. But I think if they had re-signed Kevin Lankinen and they had traded Saros, and it was obvious that Askarov was going to be the backup this year behind Lankinen, and then ultimately it was going to be his job, I think Askarov would have been fine. I think with Askarov, it was the idea of 9 more years behind the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if Justus Annunen, what if he ends up actually, because Barry's like, he's a good young goalie and I really like him. What if he ends up being better than Saros? Then what do you do?
Well, then I guess you just keep them both.
Trade them. You can't keep them both because eventually his contract will come up.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's going to have to go berserker in order to get some type of top level contract.
Why not? If he's playing the same as Saros, Saros gets a top level contract.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, when his contract's up in a little bit, you heard Elliot Friedman today, the salary cap's going to go up like $10 million in the next couple of years.
Good. Let's spend it all on goalies.
So
that'll be and then when the goalie sucks, we'll say, oh, well, it's a team in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
The Predator way. It is so mind numbing. The just staunch defense that the people that believe in this goalie have. This goalie has never won anything, and they have given him the keys to the franchise, and it is so disgusting to me that there's nothing you can do about it. Again, the contract hasn't even kicked in, and I feel like they've already been proven wrong about it. That's the part that drives me insane. Let's go to some phones. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Joey in Bellevue says, Jared, I can see it right now. 8 years from now, and Joey, it should be 9. 8 years from now, I can see you telling your son, I told him not to pay that bum before you were born, after he asks why Saros sucks so bad. It is funny. We found out that we were having a child the day after the Predators lost to Vancouver in the playoffs. And so I had no idea I was going to be a dad at that point in time. But it was that series in the middle of it, game 4 specifically, when I was like, yeah, I don't know if I can do the goalie. I don't think I can do the goalie. And then, of course, it was not his fault they lost to Vancouver, because it's never his fault. I mean, it is never his fault. I mean, in all fairness, he's got better defense than Rand Carthon had. One texter says the same people who are saying that you can't blame Saros are the same people who said that about Pekka the last 2 years when he looked like the old version of Ben Roethlisberger. Ben's legs were gone and he couldn't move in the pocket. So I do remember that. I actually thought Pekka was okay there at the end. I thought Pekka should have gone in there in the bubble series and they should have given him a shot. But by the time the Carolina series had come up, which was the last series Rene was on the team, it was Saros' team, and I was fine with it. But I think what's happened is the same people who say you can't blame Saros are the same people who, after Pekka crapped away the Winnipeg series, said you can't blame him for that. And I'm sorry, but he absolutely crapped away that Winnipeg series, probably cost you a cup. I still love him, but again, that's the fickle nature of goalies, which is why you just don't spend the money. You just don't spend the money on goalies. I said it. Dustin from Hopkinsville, Kentucky says, I said it then, and I'm saying it, said it on the show calling in. He's too short. He chokes. Well, I tell you, Dustin's all worked up. He always chokes. He said he doesn't have to go berserker. Saros isn't. He just has to outdo Saros. And right now, Juuse Antonin is outdoing UC Saros. Like, I don't think this guy's going to be better, but I'd rather have him with no commitment than Saros for the next 8 years at $7.74 million with a no move. Tony from Cottontown, which I just learned existed, by the way. Tony from Cottontown says, Jared, I agree with you. Saros 2 years ago was very good and sharp. For the last season and a half, that UC Saros does not exist. He looks slower and is sharp as a bowling ball. I love the Preds and I am a season ticket holder, but I agree with you. The other goalie looks really good, and I don't understand why he's not in goal more often. You know what's funny? I remember a game last year when they got this streak going. They played a game at LA, and they won the game. And it was a very close, kind of contentious battle against the Kings, and they won the game, and somebody texted in and said, I guarantee you Saros would not have won. That it was Lankinen that won. I believe looking back last year, Lankinen was the better goalie. That Kevin Lankinen was the better goalie last season than UC Saros. And I'm fine with saying, hey, Saros is the starter, Lankinen's the backup, let's not. But I'm not sure that I would have given that kind of commitment to Saros when Lankinen was, again, even with him, and now the other guy is even with him. Devin says people don't talk enough about how quickly Saros is going to drop off when he slows down with age. Pekka lasted longer due to his size. Saros won't have that luxury. I don't even care about him dropping off with his age. I care about the fact that he's dropping off now. That's my problem. The contract hasn't even started, and he stinks. He stinks. 899 save percentage. Stinks. It's not good enough. And I can accept the losing this season. I can accept took time for Andrew Burnett to figure these guys out, took time for them to figure Andrew Burnett out. I'm fine with keeping Andrew Burnett as the coach, even though any team in the NHL that has high expectations and starts the way the Predators does, any other team fires their coach. And I just hope Andrew Burnett understands that he's lucky that he didn't get fired. More your phone, 615-737-1025 here on the program. There is absolutely nothing that you can tell me at this point that will change my opinion on UC Saros. My question, though, is for the Willies and the Chris Masons of the world. Do you guys now still make the same excuses, or is it time to admit, hey, yeah, we might have gotten in over our skis a little bit, just wanting him to be the next Pecorino? 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game. By the way, speaking of the Predators, if you want to go to a game this season, if you want to win tickets to a Preds game, be listening to Robbie and Rexro tomorrow morning for Preds Pick to Click. All you have to do is guess a Preds goal scorer. If they put the puck in the back of the net, you win. Be listening tomorrow morning for the cue to call on Robbie and Rexro.
LaRue with a shot. That's blockered away by Demko and pulled in under control by Danton Heinen. He slides it in deep, but Svechkov came back. Put the puck on the right board to the blue line. The shot tipped. Rebound try. Oh, what a stop by Juuse Saros. He had the man right in front, Danton Heinen. Now the Predators come down. Here is Zach LaRue down the right side. Holding, shooting, and the rebound slipped into the net. Predators tie it up. Tommy Novak.
Hey, at least Tommy Novak's starting to play again, which is nice to see. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Dylan and Antioch's up next on Juuse Saros. Dylan, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. If you let me hang on the line and listen for your comments, I'm not near radio right now. But I'll admit, back when it happened, I believe I was kind of for the sign and Juuse thing. But what I didn't understand was then after Askarov asked for a trade, Willie and C-Mace and everybody kind of demonized it, like, oh, how dare he? He should have just stuck with the plan, stuck with the system. It's like, no, when you sign, the guy had to do to an 8-year deal. That's not going to happen. And so the game when they were down and Saros got pulled and they put Onanen in and they had their biggest comeback in NHL history, Preds history, excuse me, they started Onanen in the next game. And I thought that was kind of telling. I was like, yeah, this may be saying something about how they're thinking. But, goalies are like kickers. They're going to head cases. So I'm kind of hoping this may be a slump. But, the excuse making, it's a good point. The team has been great. Nothing nearly what we thought, but I'm not ready to walk it back quite yet. But I just when they did that with Askarov, they should have known he was going to ask for a trade. Like, come on now. But thanks, Jared.
Okay, so I actually want to get to that because you brought that up, and I guess we didn't make that big of a deal of it at the time. There was a lot of holier than thou crap going around with Yaroslav Askarov. Like, it was, oh, he's so immature. Oh, he's such an a-hole. Like, how dare he? I mean, again, I kept saying, like, you have a choice to make. Now, I understand why the Predators did what they did. Because a lot of people will say, well, if they were going to sign Saros to this deal, then they should have traded Askarov before they signed Saros to the deal. But they couldn't sign Saros to the deal until July 1, and the draft was before July 1. And you had to have Askarov on the roster in order to give yourself leverage against Saros if that's the deal you wanted to make. And so there was talk about how he was just so immature and how he was just so this and that. Maybe he was, I don't know. But he did kind of get demonized when it came towards demanding a trade and wanting out of here. And I don't know how you can blame him for that when, again, the Predators locked up Saros for the next 9 years. It is, a full no move for 7 years? He's not going anywhere. And so, of course, Askarov's going to want to go somewhere and play in the NHL. And instead, it was kind of treated like Barry Trotz decides when you're ready for the NHL, not you. And it's like, yes, but Yaroslav Askarov did not make his career in hockey so that he could sit on the bench. Like, he wants to play. And he's not some Scott Wedgwood backup who has to understand the fact that, hey, I'm going to make $2 million a year for the rest of my life for the next 6 years because I'm a backup. Like, that's not what the 10th pick in the draft, that's not what his goal was. And I do think there was a lot of kind of holier than thou about, oh, Askarov's so immature. Oh, Askarov has such a bad attitude. Oh, how dare Askarov? And maybe that should have been called out more. Again, I remember Chris Mason talking about it like, oh, yeah, this is bad, that's bad. I'm like, is it really that? Come on now. One texter says, Saros has been buns this season, but I'm also starting to be concerned that Burnett isn't a good coach. This team's defensive coverage stinks, and I see no adjustments. Also, when it's the last time Josi took over a game, feel like he's not as noticeable. So here's my biggest problem with the defense. I think they got too many guys back there who stink. Like, I think they got too many guys like Nick Blankenberg back there. Like, let's get some NHL players back there. Now, I can live with that for the rest of this season. But next year, I want some real NHL defensemen back there. You can get by with one Milwaukeeer on the third pair, and you play them 7 minutes of ice time a night. But you cannot get by with 4 guys from Milwaukee out of your 6 D-men, which is what you have now. Wilsby and Gravel and Delgazzo and Blankenberg and all these Milwaukeeans that are up here. Like, I need some NHL players on defense. Neil says, Jared, do you miss John Hines yet? So, I went to the Minnesota game a couple weeks ago, and I was telling I guess she's technically not my niece, but she's pretty much my niece. I was telling my niece, I was like, yeah, I really need the Predators to win tonight. And she said, why? She's like 12. She was like, why? And I said, because I kind of ran the Minnesota coach out of town, and now Minnesota's winning, and so it looks bad. And so when the Predators kicked that ass that night, I felt like a little confirmation. So here's what I'm going to say about John Hines. I remember the 2021-2022 season, and it started off with the Predators red hot and right there in the mix, second, third team in the Central the entire way. I remember the week of the Cincinnati playoff game, Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions. I remember they beat Colorado in overtime. And it was like, this team is for real. Like, this team's legit. And then once we got close to the playoffs, the wheels fell off. And they would play all these playoff teams and get smoked. They'd play terrible San Jose, and they'd win in a shootout. Then they get into the playoffs. They get swept by Colorado. And it was, oh, man, I feel like we're so close. Okay. So when it comes to Minnesota and John Hines, let's let him, win a playoff series before we mourn what could have been. Because I still don't think John Hines is worth a crap. I still think John Hines is the same old excuse maker that he had been when he was here. I do. So to answer your question, when you say, do you miss John Hines? The answer is no, I do not miss John Hines. One texter into the text line says, I agree, but in fairness, the midday show is never in favor of anyone getting in trouble and getting multiple chances for everything. That is kind of true. Like, Vingan's been texting me because he's got these stats. Vingan, who was on the side of Askarov, texted me an excuse for Saros. So he's fitting right in. I kid. But he said Saros ranks 38th out of 39 goalies with a minimum of 20 starts in the NHL this season in goal support. The Predators have scored 2.28 goals per game in his starts. So Adam is telling me that Saros is getting no run support. I don't care. I watch the games. He never steals games anymore. And to the point of the midday show, man, they really did. They defended Rand Carthon until the bitter end. And they've defended UC Saros. And they defended John Hines. Poor Caroline. She was just in the middle of all that all the time. They really do defend over there. They call themselves the Avengers. Maybe they should call themselves the Defenders. I'm kidding. Craig says UC Saros is so small he makes routine saves look miraculous and doesn't really make truly miraculous saves. As he gets older, his speed will go down and it will only get worse. I mean, I'm not convinced Saros is going to get worse. I'm just convinced this is what he is, which is not elite. Or at least, let me make sure I get this right so that everybody doesn't get upset. Not elite enough to win, which is my problem. 615-737-1025, which is the phone number here on the program if you want to weigh in. So the Titans have added a bunch of people to the front office. I got somebody who they need to add. Like, there is somebody who they need to go hat in hand to and put them in the front office today. And we'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
What is your comfort level and understanding of the structure that is in place for you, Chad, so on and so forth?
Yeah, where I came from in Kansas City, we didn't really see any structure. We all kind of worked together to make the best decisions for the team. So we weren't really concerned about titles there. At the end of the day, we were trying to make the best decision for the team at that point.
There you go. That was Mike Borgonzi. He says he doesn't care about titles. And yet the Titans just keep bringing more people into the front office. Dave Ziegler, the former general manager of the Raiders, he's assistant general manager. Reggie McKenzie, the former general manager of the Raiders, he is the vice president / senior advisor. You know what? I agree. I don't care about titles either. Chad Brinker's in charge, you're the GM, and then everybody else works for you. And I'm not, Ziegler did this or, they did. There was a puff piece Albert Breer put out about how Dave Ziegler turned down the Jets' opportunity to be the assistant general manager in order to come to the Titans. Like, yay! Dave Ziegler turned down the being overruled by Madden Football Organization in order to come here. Way to go. But I found myself reading a Blake Bedingfield piece at paulkaharski.com. It was the Blake Bedingfield's mock draft from last year. And if you've listened to this show, you know that I reference what Blake Bedingfield writes at paulkaharski.com quite often. Blake Bedingfield is the former Titans director of college scouting. He was in the front office for forever, and then John Robinson got here. Blake Bedingfield, as Joe Rexrode pointed out in The Athletic, is the one who begged Mike Mularkey and John Robinson to take Derrick Henry. And John Robinson, Ian, how did he reward Blake Bedingfield for finding him the best player in the history of the Tennessee Titans?
I think he got fired.
He fired him. So after reading this mock draft, and again, I was looking for something specific at Paul's website, and I found the Blake Bedingfield 2024 mock draft, which came out in April of last year. After reading that, I was like, okay, it's time for the Titans. And again, they're all about adding more voices to the room and more opinions and more evaluators. It's time for the Titans to rehire Blake Bedingfield. I have no skin in the game on this. I am not friends with Blake Bedingfield. And yes, Floyd technically hired Blake Bedingfield, and Floyd had respect for Blake Bedingfield, but it wasn't like that was Floyd's dude, the way that J-Rob was Floyd's dude. So I got no bias in this. All I care about is the Titans being good. And I am telling you, Blake Bedingfield, the more I read what this man writes, and then I look back in retrospect, with his first takes of what things should have happened, and then I see what happens, I'm like, this guy's got a pretty good pulse for this stuff. So here are some of the highlights from Blake Bedingfield's mock draft last year before the draft. And I am convinced after reading this, Blake Bedingfield would have been a significantly better general manager than Rand Carthon. But here's the highlights from Blake's mock. Number one, Blake had the Giants taking J.J. McCarthy at 6. Now, he had Malik Neighbors off the board at 5, but J.J. at 6, and wrote, again at paulkaharski.com, quote, in a perfect world, the Giants would like to select Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers, but they can't pass up McCarthy and the ability to allow the GM and the head coach to reset their clock on winning. What is amazing about that is that if you watch Hard Knocks last year, the Giants were sitting there going over what their plans with the draft were. Their plans at 5, when they couldn't get to 3 to take Drake May, their plans were, we're taking Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison, and if not, we're trading back for Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers. Now the Giants are desperate at quarterback and will probably have to take a prospect, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, who is behind J.J. McCarthy in terms of talent because they didn't listen to Blake Bedingfield last year. Again, Blake saying, hey, you got to take J.J. because you got to get a quarterback and, again, reset your clock on winning. They could have lost last year with J.J. and said, hey, this is our quarterback. Number 2, he called out the Titans for forcing themselves to go left tackle at 7. Blake wrote at paulkaharski.com, the Titans are another team that forced themselves into a selection because of the lack of free agent moves at a need position. They could have signed Isaiah Wynn as insurance and could have kicked him into guard if and when they drafted a tackle. Other insurance options, Jonah Williams, Tyron Smith on the cheap deal he got from the Jets, George Fant, or Brandon Parker. With no one in-house, the Titans must select a left tackle. And that turned out to be prophetic, because once Joe Alt went off the board, the Titans had to take the second best tackle, J.C. Latham, who is a right tackle, and put him at left tackle. If the Titans had signed a left tackle, they could have let the board talk to them. They could have ended up with Brock Bowers or even J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix, quarterbacks that now you're not in the quarterback mix and mess that you have to be in now. Or they could have ended up with the best defensive player on the board. But because they had to go tackle because of what they didn't do in free agency, it forced them into taking probably the 13th best player in the draft with the 7th overall pick. Blake Bedingfield nailed Bo Nix to Denver at 12, which has to mean that he heard something, right? Like the way he had the board shaking out. Because I remember thinking like, Penix is probably going to go at 12 and then, down the road, like maybe late first, early second, Nix will go. And he had Bo Nix at 12. He had all 6 quarterbacks off the board by the 12th pick. Number 4, Blake Bedingfield loved Brock Bowers. In fact, that was the player that he wanted the Titans to draft, Brock Bowers. He had Bowers going to the Jets at 10. And Blake Bedingfield wrote, quote, "Bowers is one of my top 5 players of the draft. He was productive in all 3 years with the Georgia Bulldogs and a true mismatch for linebackers because of his speed and athletic ability, plus a size mismatch against safeties. All the top teams have elite tight ends. Just look at the Super Bowl. And last year it was Travis Kelce versus George Kittle. And the Jets are getting Aaron Rodgers, a plug-and-play playmaker. Bowers is exactly what this team has been missing, and this selection could save GM Joe Douglas and head coach Robert Saleh's jobs." I think Brock Bowers would have helped that football team out on offense. And finally, he had Ladd McConkey at 30 to Baltimore. And I was thinking about this again, what we saw to Ladd McConkey in L.A. There was a lot of talk that Ladd was going to be right there where the Titans picked in the second round, maybe a little bit lower, and he ended up going higher in the second round. But he had Ladd McConkey in the first round. And after what we saw to Ladd McConkey with the Chargers, how would that have looked with Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews as an extra weapon for Lamar Jackson? And finally, when reading Blake Bedingfield's, again, mock draft in April of last year, he pointed out what my biggest pet peeve with how stupid teams approach free agency and the draft was. Writing, quote, NFL front offices have taken an unorthodox approach this offseason. So many teams have forced themselves to select a certain position of need in the draft because of the inability to fill those spots through free agency or their development of young players. The draft was always set up to allow teams to replenish their roster with younger players. Where a player was selected was determined by the immediate or long-term expectations of the player. General managers today tend to use the draft to select players to produce in year one, despite their level of readiness and ability to handle a 17-game season and the responsibilities of being an NFL starter. The Bears, Patriots, Commanders, Vikings, and Titans are all forcing themselves to select a certain position because of a lack of planning leading up to the draft. The Bears were the only team that controlled who they would be able to select, so that was easier to handle. But the other teams are going to be forced to select whoever else is available. And successful teams take talent and do not just fill needs. And that is my biggest pet peeve of the draft. Well, Brock Bowers is the better player, but we have to take J.C. Latham. That's my problem. We didn't sign Danico Autry back because he cost too much money. We thought we were going to be able to sign him. We didn't. So now we have to take the DT out of Texas. Again, there were some, things in there where you'd look at it and say, "Ooh, Drake May over Jaden Daniels. Wow." But not everybody's right all the time. But again, just reading that back, again, I was not looking for this mock draft. It came up on a Google search when I was looking for something else that Blake Bedingfield had said, and I ended up just probably 15, 20 minutes just reading this mock draft and knowing now that we know what happened and what has happened. I'm like, wow, Blake Bedingfield really got a lot of stuff right. And I'm not even saying like in the player selection of where they went, though Bo Nix at 12, A, pretty gutsy, and B, probably means he was hearing something in the league, which means he still has connections even though he's been out for a while. But so between reading his mock draft last year in hindsight and Joe's story in The Athletic, which once again highlighted how Blake Bedingfield was the sole reason the Titans drafted Derrick Henry, I've decided that if the Titans are going to put all these cooks in the kitchen and they're going to get all these great opinion havers and everybody's going to be in there pulling the rope in the same direction so that Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker can make the best decisions possible, they need to bring Blake Bedingfield back into the front office. You can give him the title of senior personnel advisor. I don't give a rat's ass what title you give him. Bring him back, put him in the front office. The guy knows ball. I read his stuff. It's not just all sitting there and airing out dirty laundry or you should have done this or you should have done that. It's all foresight. It's very thoughtful what he writes from a football personnel standpoint. So give him I don't care. Senior personnel advisor, whatever. Because remember, according to Mike Borgonzi, titles don't matter, eh? But again, I got to get it out there. They need to go bring Blake Bedingfield back, and they need to do it yesterday. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, TD, live from the Senior Bowl. What's he hearing? What's he seeing? We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and it is 4 o'clock on a Thursday, which means it's time for the TD Power Hour. TD is live in Mobile at the Reese's Senior Bowl. TD, how are you?
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay, yeah. The Zoom wasn't zooming. Yeah, no, I'm doing really well, man. I'm here at the airport. Got a pretty zealous group over here behind me. But hey, man, it's been great to be on the road and check out some different groups of prospects. And this is what happens this time of the year. So I'm excited.
TD, I want to start from a gossip standpoint first, if I may. At the Senior Bowl, what are you seeing? What are you hearing when it comes to the Titans and the number one pick?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. A lot of these personnel people down here, they firmly believe that Cam Ward is going to be the pick. There are some people who, you know, they keep asking me, hey, are they going to trade down? You think they're going to trade down? And that quote that was boosted out of our local media session, which had Brinker in regards to generational talent, that really has put a big influence on a lot of the thoughts and beliefs from people across the league, because that's one of the first things that I continue to see come up whenever someone comes to me or talk about the Titans, or, you know, I just ask someone else, you know, what they think of the situation.
TD, when you say that a lot of personnel people are thinking Cam Ward is going to be the pick, what are they kind of basing that off of?
Well, they're basing it off of just they think that the Titans are going to like him more, the upside part of it. When you look at Shador, I think just in people within the Titans that I talk to, the fit is obviously there, and that's something that's a big draw to them. And just the way he interviewed with them, it definitely put a charm on them. I'll put it that way. And that's something that he is going to do to anybody that he interviews with, because he's a charismatic, he's a likable guy, he's someone that you can get behind and follow. So you know, that's what the Titans have said. But as far as the people outside of the organization, they look at the upside, and I think there's just too much for to pass up with Cam if they were to take a pick, because that's the other thing. A lot of people feel that Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are the guys they'll look at.
Do the people, when they ask you about the Titans trading the pick, kind of what is that discussion like when you're, I assume, talking to a personnel guy somewhere else who is trying not to mine you for information, but I think maybe get your feel on it, because they know you don't know, but again, they know that you know the people that are making that decision. What is kind of their sentiment when it comes to that pick and perhaps the Titans trading down? Like, does it seem like there would be a ton of interest in that pick from just what you gathered?
No, I wouldn't say that there would be a ton of interest. I think really what it is they're asking me if I think they would trade down, and they're like, I don't know why they would, you know. So that's really where it's coming from, as far as like, I don't know why they wouldn't take a quarterback, and that to them doesn't make sense. Trading down if with the quarterback as an option there for them.
So when you talk to these people and these personnel people around the league, do they feel like Cam Ward is justified as a 1-1 pick? Because I was listening to Mel this week, and Mel was talking about how people that he's talked to in the league have said that some people think he's crazy for having Cam Ward at number 1 to the Titans in his latest mock. Do people around the league at the Senior Bowl, do they think Cam Ward would be justified at 1-1?
They do. Yeah, they do. A lot more people think he would be justified at 1-1 than Shador, quite frankly. And I found that as a surprise, because I remain convinced that he is NFL ready. He's plug and play. You put him in there and he's going to go ahead and go to work and do a good job for you. I firmly believe that. And I don't care if his name was, you know, Shador Franklin. That would be my belief, just based off of watching him play. It's nothing to do with the last name. But quite frankly, I'm not a big Deion Sanders fan, but I think that he's capable. But it's not the the same that I've gotten, especially here in the Senior Bowl. That's where it's really interesting. At the Shrine, there were more people who were leaning towards Shador being, a legit number one pick, but it's not as prevalent here in Mobile.
So when it comes to Hunter and Carter, do people around the league, do they look at them and say, hey, Tennessee, I mean, they would love, it'd be great if they took those guys? Or is it just they feel Carter and Hunter are in the same class with Cam Ward, and because the Titans need a quarterback, that it would be more likely that they would then take the quarterback?
Yeah, I think, the main thing is you obviously never want to reach, for a position, whether it's quarterback or anything, but there is an overall belief that that's what they'll end up doing.
What do people think of Hunter and Carter?
I've gotten more people tell me that they feel, because my stand with Hunter, I'm like, hey, he's PM, playmaker, offense, special teams. That's what he plays. But more people here believe that he is a legit top tier talent, cornerback wise, and I don't see it the same, but that's what I've gotten for him. Uh, um, Carter is just, I've heard a lot of comparisons to Michael Parsons. I've heard a lot of comparisons, to those types of guys. And when you look at that, they're looking at it from, hey, this guy's going to make your secondary better, the front end helping the back end, and I mean that's a belief that a lot of people do have, but it's just kind of interesting seeing the weight that's put on different positions as you talk to people with different organizations.
It's funny. And let me say that if Mike Borgonzi came up to you and said, TD, Travis Hunter is going to be a corner, we're going to play him at corner, would that change your mind if you were debating Carter and Hunter, if he's not going to be a primarily wide receiver, offensive playmaking player?
Yeah, I think, me personally, I think with this team, because they're so desperate for playmakers, he's a fit from that perspective, because that's exactly what it is. Now, obviously, they're desperate for playmakers on both sides of the ball, but I think, when you look at Hunter, I feel he could be a bigger playmaker for them offensively. But I mean, look, he does intercept the football. Like, let's not deny that. He does that well. But I would, if they said corner only, I would say, okay, well, you probably should take one of the two quarterbacks or Abdul Carter.
What did you make of the kind of new additions in the mix when it came to Dave Ziegler and Reggie McKenzie? And I know Paul wrote a story about how the Titans are convinced there won't be too many cooks in the kitchen. Again, who knows what all those guys do? Who knows how Borgonzi leans on them or doesn't, or what Brinker. What was kind of just your observation of the group with Brinker, Borgonzi, McKenzie, and Ziegler?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course they're going to be convinced that, because you're not going to execute a plan that you don't believe is going to work. So really what I looked at it was they're making sure that they have a lot of experience there in the GM type of realm right there. And that is something that you do want to do, as you have a guy in Chad Brinker who he doesn't have actual GM experience or true experience running an organization. And we know Mike Borgonzi and what he's done, even though he's a very tenured personnel person, he hasn't been the guy before. So I think what they're doing is surrounding their, I don't want to say it's almost like young prospects with a lot of talent, but I think they're surrounding their guys who, are in place now with others that can come in and help them out. That's the way I look at it. I don't oppose the moves at all.
TD with us as always. He's live at the Senior Bowl. Coming up next, his interactions with Shedeur Sanders this weekend. And what about Shedeur not participating at the Shrine Bowl and is up in the air with the Combine? What did TD make of meeting Shedeur and spending some time around him, and the Titans spending time around him in Dallas? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
I know you spent a lot of time with the Titans yesterday. What was that like? What was the conversation?
Yeah, it was truly exciting that I was able to get and meet everybody, and I was able to ask questions and understand me also.
What have you thought about potentially being the number one pick? How important will that be to you?
Yeah, I'm just a player, so I'm just thankful for whatever situation, whoever drafts me. I know I'll be able to change their program.
Shador, when you meet with these NFL teams, what's your main message in terms of what you think you could bring to their organization?
It's not what I think; it's what I know I could bring. It's them just understanding and understand my personality, being able to see it. They see media, they see cameras, they see everything, and not everybody has the best and greatest intentions to represent me well. So I just came here and to represent the game, to bring attention to the game.
That was Shador Sanders at the East-West Shrine in Dallas. TD, you were there at the East-West Shrine around Shador. You had some interactions with Shador and questions for Shador and videos up on your Twitter. But I want to ask this. What did you make of meeting Shador Sanders, who, of all the draft prospects, is probably the most recognizable in the class?
Yeah, no, I was there and had some questions. I guess they didn't make it onto the reel, but it's all good. No, what I made out of meeting him, because I walked up on him in the food court, and because there's a food court attached to the hotel there where they were staying, and I walked up on he and his brother Dion Jr. and I just introduced myself, and we talked a little bit, and the first thing he asked me was like, you know, who? Well, you cover the Titans. Who would you pick? And I said, well, I mean, you. And he real quick had a reaction to say, well, you're just saying that because I'm here. And I said, no, check the internet. Like, I've been talking about you as the best option for this team, quarterback wise, for a couple months now. So I like his charisma again. I like how he is a very calm, relaxed, and even like somebody walking up on you and like a random person walking up on you in a wherever, a lot of guys I've seen like initially look uncomfortable, but he was cool right from the start. So I thought that was really good. I think also in meeting him and talking to him, you could tell that I don't want to say it's prepared, but everything he says is very well thought out and strategic. So that's kind of what I gathered from him.
TD, what do you make of all the varying opinions on Shador Sanders? Mel Kiper's got him as a top 10 prospect.
Yeah.
A lot of the mock drafts have him in the top 10. But then I see, Pro Football Focus has him ranked 43rd. And Mike Renner at CBS has him ranked 40th. And Matt Miller, your colleague at ESPN, has him ranked 22nd. And I think there's a lot of concern around maybe the long-term upside of Shador Sanders. So what do you make of all the different varying opinions about Shador?
Yeah, and when you mention those guys, you need to mention someone else who's just as good, if not better than all of them, and that's Jordan Reed, and he has Shador ranked 12th. Now, Cam is ranked 10th on his list, but, he has him there too. So what I make is just his beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And so many years, quarterbacks that look like Shador, that were more athletic, they were told, hey, you got to be better from in the pocket. I need you to be a more surgical player. But guess what? Shador is that, and now it's, hey, you need to be a little bit more of an athlete, and it's just a goalpost. They tend to shift. And for me, when I look at Shador, I don't know that I've seen a more polarizing prospect in the last 5 years, to be honest with you. And it's just something where, I've heard everything from his dad pulled a reporter's credential, wherever that was, to, oh, he holds on to the ball too long, which I think is accurate as reasons why they don't like him. But here's the thing, and talking to Mike Borgonzi yesterday, we talked a lot about Andy Reid, and he talked about how he and Andy Reid, they would watch film, and little things like holding on to the ball would come up, or things like with Patrick Mahomes and his footwork, his base being too wide. Those would come up, and he would say, I could fix that. Like, it's a cosmetic thing. I could fix that. And I think when you look at some of the things with Shador, you could fix that. Holding on to the ball too long, you could fix that. I think when you look at, scrambling backwards like it's Tecmo Bowl, you could fix that. So there are issues that could be fixed, but it just, for whatever reason, with this kid, I honestly have not seen someone that so many people just hate as much as they do without even knowing him or talking to him or even having a single interaction. It's weird to me.
It does feel like he's becoming like a Tim Tebow-esque prospect or Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Kind of that level of polarizing. And in the case of Tebow, he kind of stunk. And in the case of Lamar, he's headed to Canton. So, it feels like it can be either side of the coin. I know the Titans had positive things to say about Shedeur after meeting him at the East-West Shrine. Was there any sense that you got one way or another about how they feel about Shedeur or view him in comparison to Cam?
Yeah, I really, just in talking to the people that I talked to, there wasn't really a comparison because they still have more work to do on Cam. They still have to meet Cam, right? So that's not something that I gathered, but they're definitely the prevailing, there were, 9 to 10 people in that meeting. I talked to 6 of them, and every one of them, hey, you could tell that he's not worried about the money. You could tell that he's focused on just being great. I love the fact that he doesn't really have to play football, but he's doing it, and he really wants to be good at it. And he's mature. He's not someone that seems like the lights are too big. He's prepared for this moment. That's just the overall thought. And then there's also this report that came out that the Titans supposedly asked him not to practice. That couldn't be further from the truth, frankly.
Yeah.
And the people that I talked to, they were actually a little disappointed because they wanted to see him, and that's, and talking to Callahan and Borgonzi, they talked about, hey, being down here, being able to feel the presence, the play from these players in person. And he was one of the ones they wanted to feel it from, and Cam Ward here. So you have that. Yeah, that was wrong. They definitely didn't ask him not to practice.
I mean, it took me, I read that report on, I want to say maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't even remember what day it was. I read that report that Shedeur Sanders reportedly was asked by the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants to not practice at the East-West Shrine Bowl. And within 15 minutes, I was told that was not true. I do wonder this, though. What do you make of Shedeur not competing at the East-West Shrine Bowl and, was asked about the combine and was non-committal there? I understand the slam dunk top 5 picks not throwing at the combine. Usually the guys that have something to prove do throw at the combine, do participate in the All-Star games. Do you think Shedeur should be competing both at the East-West Shrine or the Senior Bowl? And do you think he should compete at the combine?
I think he should have not the practice, but the throwing session. But it was the plan all along. Like, it's not like some wrong turn happened and they went to a different destination. That was the plan all along. Because one of the things I did get to do there in Frisco, I connected with the QB coach who's coaching both Shedeur and Cam Ward, and we talked a lot about Shedeur, both of them, frankly. And I feel that he should compete at the combine. I think that would be good for him. But then again, other quarterbacks have skipped that and waited till pro day and made it happen. And if he were to do that, I get it, to make sure that his guys get seen, LeJohntay Wester, Jimmy Horn Jr., as well as Will Shepherd.
TD with us as always. Now, one of my favorite parts of the year when TD joins us, the standouts from the Senior Bowl. Who did he see? Who did he like? Remember, this is where TD kept saying, hey, your guy at Louisville, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., this is where this came up last year, was from the Senior Bowl. So what did TD see this week? We'll do that next with TD for the TD Power Hour at Stillman & Company on 102.5 The Game.
Jackson Dart has a live arm. He can move. He's competitive. He's a smart guy. He's got all of those things. What we don't know is, can he read a defense the way that NFL teams need him to read a defense? Now, in fairness, there are, most NFL offenses are incorporating a lot more college principles to make it easier for guys to succeed early in their career. And so he's got that going for him. But really, Lane Kiffin is so brilliant at scheming against college defenses that NFL teams are going to have to see Jackson Dart as a complete unknown until they can get him in a room and start picking his brain and figuring out what he knows about defensive schemes and how offenses apply to those defensive schemes. And then they still won't know how good he is at applying that in the short time frame he has between the snap and the back of his drop when he's got to release the ball. There was a former Ole Miss quarterback about 5 years ago that was drafted, I believe, mid-rounds, I believe, by Carolina, who said the words, I can't believe he said it, if he knew how ill-prepared he would be to play quarterback in the NFL from that college system, he would have gone to a different place. Now, whether or not he's right, I don't know. I happen to think Lane Kiffin is a phenomenal coach. But at the same time, if I'm an NFL coach, I don't look at Jackson Dart's pro day. I don't look at how he throws at the combine. I look at how he absorbs and applies principles in the all-star process when there are defenses flying around him as the most important single thing in the evaluation process.
That was Trevor Maddich on our show talking about Jackson Dart. TD with us. He saw Jackson Dart, amongst others, at the Senior Bowl. TD, I have to ask you, did you hear Charles Robinson this morning on Robbie and Rex Road saying that personnel people he's talking to in the league think there is a chance that Jackson Dart can end up in the first round the way Bo Nix ended up in the first round last year?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. We see this every year. They always work to push one of their guys up in there, and I think especially with Shedeur and Cam Ward being up there, it's gonna happen. A guy I would look out for is Will Howard, and he didn't come down here like he was originally going to and play, but that's the quarterback I would look out for. And I tell you, just being at Shrine and being here, the best quarterback that I've seen is Kyle McCord.
The Syracuse quarterback who was at Ohio State.
Correct.
So I want to get your thoughts because Dart did compete, Milroe did compete, Dylan Gabriel did compete. What'd you see out of those guys?
Yeah, I would hate to be a receiver down here trying to show off how well I could catch the football. I'll put it to you this way. The receivers that showed out, they did a good job of showing that they could get separation, that they could run routes. They got some chances to catch the ball, but I mean, it was the first day, 7-on-7, 1-on-ones. It was just bad, out of Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart in that group. It was very bad.
Why did Jalen Milroe decide to declare for the draft and not go back to college? I mean, Jalen Milroe's got talent, but I don't know, TD.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, he has the traits, and obviously you always have those guys who say, hey, I could take these traits and we could make something happen with it. And I think that's what's happening with Jalen Milroe. I thought he would be bigger, honestly. He wasn't much bigger than Jackson Dart, frankly. And I'll say this about Dylan Gabriel. He was very, very small. I was very surprised at, how little he was. He's definitely not 6'1". I would give him, and actually I texted you. Remember, I texted you that first night I was here and saw him. He's probably 5'9", 5'10".
TD, you texted me and said that Dylan Gabriel was as tall as me. I told Dylan Gabriel's OC at Oregon, I said, I hear Dylan Gabriel is as tall as me. And he said, no, Dylan Gabriel's not 5'7". I would like the record to state that I'm 5'8". But again, I told you the story about how when I saw Kyler Murray, and Kyler was 5'10" at the combine, but when I saw Kyler getting his credential 2 years ago at the Super Bowl next to me, I was like, this guy's just as tall as me. Now, our body comps are a little different, but, again, we'll see that with Dylan Gabriel. Who stood out, TD? Who did you like at the Senior Bowl this week that really flashed for you?
I will say this. Those guys in the trenches were showing off. That D-line, interior, and the edge guys, man. And it was pretty cool because there were a couple times that I got to see, schools team up. So You look at RJ Open. If you remember his dad, Roman Open, who played for the Giants and a few
From
other
Louisville.
teams. He was an offensive lineman. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Get the plug. But no, RJ was really good. He's so strong coming off the edge. And there was the one time where he forced a pressure, and Jack Kaiser was able to pick it off. And then even today, Ty Robinson from Nebraska, he got. I mean, he did an inside move and he got in there so quick. And I forget who the quarterback was, but they had to roll out, and he tried to fit one in a bad spot, and Tommy Hill, the Nebraska corner, was able to catch it. So those guys up front stood out. Shamar Stewart, man, I will tell you this, the size and get off that he has, I mean, like he was coming out like a C8 Stingray, you know, 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. It was really, really impressive at his size, how he was getting off the ball. So keep an eye on him. He's not going to be playing in the game on Saturday, but Shamar Stewart out of A&M, I know going to want to hear about some receivers, so I will point to a couple of them. Tez Johnson, I mean, look, 156 pounds. It's definitely not something that you want to have a bunch of those exceptions. Excuse me, but if you have one or two of them, he's a guy that I would have. And despite that size, he lined up in the slot. He worked the middle of the field really well. He caught everything. And you talk about separation. He definitely had that. So, if you want to go a smaller guy, that's an option. I think you also have to look at Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. And the thing that I liked with him, he and Pat Bryant out of Illinois, these are bigger guys, but their release package was really good. And you rarely saw them get jammed up at the line of scrimmage. They knew how to set things up. And also, they're at the top of the route, the moves that they made to get separation there. There were a couple times where they really did some good things, and they caught the ball in those combat catches. So those are a couple. If you want to look at offensive line, I actually posted a video today of Carson Vincent. He's the Alabama A&M tackle. And, we're talking about HBCU, FCS level. But this dude, so at the end of practices, Jared, what they do, they have call-outs. It's like a competition period. So they'll, say, hey, we want Carson Vincent. And then they'll say, okay, Shamar Stewart. And that's what they did the first time. And you heard me talk about Stewart and how good he was. Well, that rep that they had, it was for 25 push-ups. Whatever guy lost, his unit had to do 25 push-ups. And Stewart did an outside rush and try to spin back inside. And just the footwork and how quick it was by Carson Vincent and redirected. It was one of those, hey, there aren't any Timberlands and T-shirts allowed in this establishment. Like, he pushed them out of the club. And I thought that was really good. So those are some of the guys that stood out. I mean, I can't, you talk about Louisville guys, right? Hey, listen, man, Quincy Riley is very good. He showed that he could play in press. He showed really good just ability to find the football. Now, I was joking with him yesterday because he dropped 3 picks, but he normally has better ball skills. Just a quick bonus, I give you a couple guys from East West Shrine, since we didn't talk about that, and we're on to Louisville. Ja'Cory Brooks is a very good route runner. Watch him tonight.
Baller.
Watch him, the receiver out of Louisville. I was really impressed with him. And coming in, he was a guy I wanted to talk to and see. Now, this other guy, he's not playing in the game tonight. He only practiced twice, and he said, that's it, I'm done. Jacoby Bryant, or we just call him Kobe Bryant, out of Kansas. Very, very sticky, feisty, tremendous ball skills. He's going to be somebody to keep your eye on as you go through the draft.
TD, there's one specific prospect I keep hearing about, this Mike Green at Marshall as an edge
my
rusher.
Goodness.
It
Yes.
feels to me, and again, I have no idea. There was some chatter that he could have been there at 35. It sounds like he's played his way out of 35 and into the first round this week. Have you seen that out of him?
Yeah, it's definitely reasonable to say that he played into the first round. He had 1 rep, man. Let me tell you, what's Chris Sanders say? Run through his mustache. That's literally what he did coming off the edge. He ran right through that tackle. I forget who it was, but I mean, like, literally ran right through him. And they try to say, oh, he fell. No, it wasn't the Oregon one. I don't remember exactly who it was, so I don't want to, missay it. But yeah, he ran through somebody on one of those reps, and this dude was just consistently getting pressure. It was bad, that group, of national defensive linemen. man, Darius Alexander out of Toledo too. I got to mention him. He's an interior guy, and he's another one. You talk about that quick get off. It was like Fletcher Cox, like timing that snap and eliminating that gap between he and the guard within like that, like so quick. So he's another one. That group, man, it was tough for them to work in team period because a lot of plays had to be whistled dead quicker than normal because they were in the backfield.
TD, we'll get to the questions for you. Again, coming fresh off the Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine, 615-737-1025. We'll hit the phones for TD, and we'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. TD Power Hour, Teron Davenport with us in Mobile on his way home from the East-West Shrine and the Senior Bowl. TD, do you have a thought, or do you want to go to the phones at 615-737-1025?
No, to the phone.
One texter says, TD, if you had a great trade offer for the number 1 pick, would you take it, or would you go with Ward or Sanders to secure the quarterback position?
Well, it would depend upon what happens at the veteran quarterback side of things. I think that really, you're going to see quickly how things could play out as far as quarterbacks are concerned. So I still have to say, hey, if I'm able to acquire a veteran that, could hold it down a year or two, yeah, sure, I'll take it. I probably would be more inclined to take it anyway and just figure out how we can get to the top and get one of these quarterbacks next season, if that's the case.
One texter into the text line says, TD, what do you think about Shedeur having Dion FaceTime during his meeting? Did he ask permission from the Titans before answering it? If he did not, I would find that disrespectful. What do you make of the Dion and Shedeur FaceTime during the Titans meeting?
Yeah, no, look, man, he didn't ask his dad to call him. His dad absolutely called him, and that's what happened. They were like, hey, answer it. And he picked it up, and, they talked for a little bit, said what's up, and that was that. And I mean, look, one of the things that Shedeur said was, I'm my own man. It's time to cut the cord. So for those who, he can't do this without his daddy, etc., he has understanding that he needs to. So that's my, perspective.
One texter says, TD, what do you make of the fact that the Titans only have 2 picks in the top 100 this year? And do you think there will be teams that will be willing to trade given how many good players there supposedly are going to be in the second round this year?
Yes, that's a great point. The 2 picks in the top 100. And we know what Chad Brinker said. He wants 12 in the top 100 over the next 3 years, right? And one way to do it, I was looking at the trade that the Bears made to bump up to get Mitch Trubisky when they flipped with the 49ers. They were able to get another second, a third, and a second round pick the next year. I think that's one way, boom. You go from 1 to 3, and actually going from 1 to 3 is a bigger drop than going from 2 to 3. So now you go 1 to 3, and you get at the very least, the number 3 pick, you get top of the second, you get another third. And, I would ask for maybe a 4th this year and a second next year, or a second and third, whatever. And now you will have maximized the amount of picks that you have in the top 100. And you still get to take your pick of one of the quarterbacks. If it's none of them, you get to take your pick of Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. So either way, you're sitting pretty at number 3.
One texter says, TD, what do most of the people in the NFL think when it comes to Carter versus Hunter?
That's a good question. And it depends on who you're talking to. I talk to a lot of guys on the DB perspective of things, and, they're going to be the ones that say, hey, the back end fronts, and it helps the front end. You know what I mean? But, there were some, I actually talked to Lige Duzable. Do you remember him?
Yeah, I've actually had him on Sirius. I think he's a great guest when he's come on. He does NFL
awesome.
Radio. Yeah, he's great.
He's awesome. So talked to him a little bit, and he was talking about the Abdul Carter and how that would clearly help the secondary and create more turnovers. So it's been kind of torn. More people, there's some who go with Carter, some who go with Hunter. I've gotten the same.
One texter into the text line says, TD, how do you feel about the Titans figuring out the right tackle position in the draft this year after seeing guys at both the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, I think they could figure it out. I mean, between the draft and free agency, there's tackles there that could be had. I think Emory Jones he's an interesting one from LSU. I talked about Carson Vincent. He's someone you can flip to the other side and let him play right tackle, kind of like how Titus Howard has done. So there's options. I think they could find somebody. It's just a matter of getting somebody that at the very least has the want to. It starts there. And I think that's what you have to find. And I mean, let's be honest, that want to could be questioned. When you're talking about, Jalen Duncan and you're talking about Nicholas P. Ferrer.
One texter under the text line says, TD, what do you know and how do you feel about the running back position? And what about the Titans maybe later in the draft entering up with Cam Scatterbo?
Yeah, look, Cam Scatterbo would be a good option. You want to have that short yardage. You want to have that hammer. That's something later in the draft you could do. Let me say this, though. Before I left to come here, I went to Exos in Plano, and I watched some guys. I met Matthew Golden, talked to him a little bit. Luther Burden III. There were a few other, Amari and Hampton, and that's where I wanted to go. Now, there are some who believe he could challenge Ashton Jeanty for best back in this class. Now, I probably am going to lean more towards Ashton Jeanty, but talking to my guy Brent Callaway, he said that Hampton is an absolute monster in the work outside of things. And I don't know if you got to see much from North Carolina, but he was pretty dominant there. So you do have him. Scatterbo, just like, he's one of those, you have to have like 2 or 3 of those on your team that really just, they don't care. You know what I mean? And it's just like anything goes. If there's a fight, they're going to be right in the front. If they didn't start the fight, they'll make sure that they're a part of finishing it. Like that type of, you need those type of guys. So he would definitely be a plus for this team.
One texter says, TD, do you think Brian Callahan feels like he's on the hot seat after all of the changes in the personnel department and him remaining the coach?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing with coaches. They always feel like they're coaching for their job anyway. So I'm going to say yes. I don't think it's solely because of that. I think it's just because like it's an innate thing. And that's why they spend these ungodly amounts of time in the office, and they're just like, oh, there's some advantage that somebody can find, and I can't let them find it. So yeah, coaches are paranoid by nature.
One texter says, TD, what do we think about the Titans in the tight end position, and what do we think of the draft in the tight end position?
Yeah, so I think the tight end position is solid with the Titans. They will need to get a blocking tight end if they don't bring Nick Vannett back. But I mean, look, Chig, he came along late in the year, and it wasn't just because he was catching checkdowns. There were plays literally being designed for him, and he was cashing in on them. So you do have that. I will also say this: Elijah Arroyo, if he can stay healthy, this is the Miami tight end. If he runs routes like a receiver, and we talked yesterday about being a big slot receiving option. And, if you ask him, Miami never stopped me and tight end you, but I mean, he's a guy that can help put him back on the map. That is an option that you could do. There are some who feel that he's, pushing into that tight end 3 spot. So yeah, I mean, there's some options. I got to see a few tight ends here. Mason Taylor, he was a consistent playmaker also.
One person said, TD, who is the guy you would be most excited about covering if they ended up a Titan?
Oh, it's without a doubt Shador. It's just like it's a double-edged sword, though. The venom that is thrown on him, it kind of irritates me, but the amount of eyes that go on to work because of him, like he's very dynamic and polarizing. That's one of the things I loved about Levis. Last year and the year before, is he drew eyes to your work. But Shador is going to draw national eyes, so it's easily Shador Sanders without a doubt.
One texter says, is the line not a factor in this year's draft, or are the Titans content with who they have going forward? I can tell you right now, TD, the Titans are not content with where they are in the offensive line right
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. And they're not content receiver-wise either. So couple things there. Yeah, I think the line is still a factor, but it's just so much is pointed to the number 1 pick, and a lot is forgotten about the other picks. And I think those are going to be other picks where they could address offensive line.
One person says, TD, what are your thoughts on Savion Williams, the wide receiver out of TCU?
Yes. Hey, now this is a pure X receiver, and he's 6'4", I want to say like 217. Um, he moves well. He can get you separation. He definitely is someone, in the fourth round or so. I could see them looking at a guy like him. It's just so unfortunate they don't have that third. That's why that 1-3 move, and building up another fourth round and getting a third and getting a second, like that allows you to get guys like Sabian Williams, guys like, Armani Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. But yeah, I think he comes in and he gives you a legit X receiver. And he's someone that you could have with Nick Westbrook, with Ikine, just moving across the formation.
One texter says, TD, if the Titans ended up taking a quarterback in this draft who is not Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, who would you want it to be, and what round would you expect to be able to take him in?
Honestly, I feel Kyle Sloter. I would keep saying that. Not Kyle Sloter, Kyle McCord. I think, when you look at him, third round would probably be a good option. I happen to like Will Howard also. He's somebody second round would probably be the case with him. There are some who think that he could get pushed into the first round. I wouldn't take either of those guys and say, hey, that's the quarterback of the future, though.
Interesting. TD, great stuff as always. Safe travels coming home, and we will see you next week.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep, Saron Davenport, as always, on our program for the TD Power Hour. Coming up next, boy, a lot of people are saying, let's make a deal. Let's trade out of the pick. Trade back, trade back, trade back. But there's kind of one element of this that I find it very hard for the Titans to be able to actually do. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. So TD was down at the Senior Bowl, and again, I asked TD straight up. I said, TD, give me the gossip. Give me the tea. Give me what you're hearing. And the first two things he said when he talked to personnel people around the league, number one, he said that personnel people around the league that he talked to think that Cam Ward is going to be the pick at number 1 overall. And he also said that the thing that stood out to a lot of the people that he talked to were the Chad Brinker comments last week about not passing on a generational talent. And it's my favorite part of all this is that I was in the room for the Chad Brinker deposition, which is what that was. I mean, we sat him down, we grilled him, we deposed him, and then they went on and had a press conference. And I was in that deposition. And those generational talent comments he made, that went in one ear and out the other. I have the audio on my phone. Like, I can play the audio for you if I was allowed to, but it did not seem like a big deal, in all seriousness. Like, it just didn't seem like a big deal to me. But what happened was somebody in the room tweeted it out because you weren't allowed to see the audio, hear the audio, see the video. Somebody put it out there. And after whoever, tweeted it out, Adam Schefter saw it on his Twitter timeline and tweeted it out as if it was some massive, big, wow kind of thing, which it wasn't. But again, that's what the people heard. They heard the generational talent comments, and they heard, again, what TD said is a lot of people think Cam Ward's going to be the pick. Here's what I'll say. All of my information. Now, I've watched 2 Cam Ward games. I am not wowed by Cam Ward. But I have talked to some people that are in the league that said that they like Cam Ward. They don't love him, but they like him. I do not take the generational talent comments as seriously as everybody else. And when TD says they think Cam Ward's going to be the pick, we'll keep that in mind. I am not worried about the value of the number 1 pick under one condition, and that is that they think Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback. And I am talking about one of the top 7. I am not talking about how Kyler Murray is the franchise quarterback in Arizona. I don't want Kyler Murray. You can't win with Kyler Murray. You can't win with Tua. I'm not talking about that kind of guy. I'm talking about one of the top 7 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. You know him. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Daniels, Stroud, and everybody includes Justin Herbert in this, but I'm going to need Justin Herbert to start winning some more to justify being in that group. If they evaluate Cam Ward and they believe that Cam Ward is going to be in that class, maybe not in that class right away, but he is going to be in that class, then take him. Again, I haven't watched enough of Cam Ward to be able to tell you, yeah, that's what it's worth. Yeah, that's not what it's. I haven't watched enough. So I can't tell you. I can't sit down with you and say for sure that, hey, Cam Ward is definitely not going to be a franchise quarterback. The draft gurus seem to keep saying, yeah, these guys are more closer to Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy than they were to Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels last year, and that is a concern of mine. But when it comes to quarterback, that's the only position where I really don't care how much you have to pay. As long as you get it right, I do not care how much it costs. Have you ever heard somebody say it costs what it costs? I am a frugal dude. I am. I drive a nice car, but it's a used car. I like to win a deal. If you want to sell me a house, what you need to do is you need to just go ahead and tell me that the asking price is XYZ and be willing to get 200,000 less than the asking price, and I'll buy that house, because that's how I am. I am always looking for the deal, except at quarterback. That's the one place where I do not care how much it costs as long as you get it right. Now, it's hard to get it right because, again, when it comes to these guys, it's speed dating. You're speed dating with Shedeur. You're speed dating with Cam Ward when you get the opportunity to meet with him, when you get the opportunity to bring him in on a top 30 visit, when you get you're speed dating, you're checking resumes, you're calling references, but you don't really know him. You're not there every day with him, and you can't be there every day with him. So you got to figure it out right away. You got to decide and then say, hey, I'm willing to risk my career on this guy. And if you watch enough tape, and if you're wowed by the leadership skills and the personality and the way they come off in the job interviews, go ahead. The number one pick, no matter what you could get in a trade for it, the number one pick does not matter to me. As far as we can get three ones and 3 2s and a third, and it doesn't matter if you're getting the guy. If you watch the Hard Knocks last year that the Giants did, which is by far the best Hard Knocks I've ever seen, I don't care about the 7th round pick out of Weber State who's trying to make the team that they have on Hard Knocks during the training camp. I don't care about that. And I don't care about the in-season stuff. But the offseason stuff really showed the Giants breaking it down. You know, they were inside the boardroom. They were sitting there saying, what do we think about Brian Burns and trading these picks in order to get Brian Burns? And it showed the phone call between Joe Shane, the general manager of the Giants, with Elliott Wolf, the de facto general manager of the Patriots, as the Giants tried to trade up to get to number 3 to take Drake May and offer a first rounder this year. And New England said no. And again, it doesn't matter. Washington wasn't trading away Jaden Daniels, no matter what you offered. New England wasn't trading away Drake May, no matter what you offered, because they looked at those guys as prospects and said, those are potential franchise quarterbacks, and we're taking them. If Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker, Reggie McKenzie, Dave Ziegler, whoever, if they all look at this and they come back and say, this is a potential franchise quarterback, then you take them. Floyd told me a story one time, the only time he drafted a true franchise quarterback. Although, let's give him credit, Vince Young in the 1 year he was here was Rookie of the Year and went to the Pro Bowl. But when the Titans decided they were going to take Steve McNair in 95, and I've heard Bill Polian say, because he was the general manager at Carolina, and Carolina had traded back to 5, and Bill Polian said, whoever Tennessee didn't take, we were going to take. We were going to take McNair. We were going to take Kerry Collins. But when Floyd decided he was going to draft Steve McNair, he told the story that right before the draft, Tom Coughlin called him and said, I'm going to take Steve McNair with the number 2 pick, unless you give me a extra 3rd round pick. And Floyd knew he was bluffing, knew it. Said, if you take McNair, I'll take Tony Baselli, the left tackle that Jacksonville ended up taking, who is now in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he should be in the Hall of Fame, but he is. And Floyd said, if you do that, I'll take your guy. You take my guy, I'll take your guy. Bud Adams looked at Floyd and said, do you think there's a chance they'll take McNair? Floyd said, I don't think so, but again, you never know with these things. And Bud Adams said, make the trade. He told Floyd, make the trade to make sure we get McNair. Floyd didn't make the trade because he felt like he knew Tom Coughlin was bluffing. Jacksonville drafted Tony Baselli, and the Titans drafted Steve McNair. But the moral of this story is not, way to go, Floyd, you won the deal. That's not the moral of the story. The moral of the story was Floyd couldn't sleep the night after the draft. And the reason he couldn't sleep the night after the draft is because he said he was sitting there in his bed looking up at the ceiling and thinking to himself, what if they had taken McNair? The owner of the football team just told me to make the trade to make sure that we got the quarterback that we viewed as our franchise guy. And I would have been directly almost from a insubordination standpoint, directly disobeying the owner's orders. He said he would have fired me, and he should have fired me if they had taken McNair. Again, the point is, if it's a franchise quarterback, value doesn't matter. We always talk about the Ricky Williams trade, where New Orleans traded everything to be able to get Ricky Williams, and how bad of a draft trade that was. But that's because that was for a running back. If that had been for Aaron Rodgers, would it have been a bad trade? So, again, I haven't evaluated these guys to tell you that Ward is not, a legitimate franchise guy. But if he is, and again, these personnel people what TV said, these personnel people think the Titans are taking Cam Ward at 1. But if he is, I do not care how much you pay. I care when you spend $8 million at running back and draft another guy in the 3rd round. To me, poor resource management. The 38th pick on a run-stuffing DT, I care. Quarterback, I don't care how many first-round picks it takes to get Mahomes. I don't care what it takes to get Josh Allen or Jaden Daniels, or any of these. I don't care. Because, again, if you have that guy, you got a shot every week. Have you noticed? None of those teams are bad. Lamar's team's not bad. Allen's team's not bad. Mahomes' team's not bad. Herbert's team's not bad. Stroud's team's not bad. Daniels' team's not bad. Burrow's team, they're horrible outside of Burrow, and every year they got a shot because of Burrow. So, again, if you think Cam Ward's that dude, take him. If not, then don't. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106.
Chad said he'd like to see 30 draft picks in the next 3 years, 12 in the top 100. How realistic is it to get those picks, and how difficult will it be?
It's certainly it's possible, yeah, to do that. Like I said, we just have to have discipline in the draft as we're going through the process. Draft picks are our biggest form of currency. So when there's opportunities to trade back to collect more picks, we're going to do that. So that's always the goal, to try to get as many picks in the top 100 as you can.
That was Mike Borgonzi. I love the fact that Paul's like, how realistic is it to be able to get all those picks? And he's like, I mean, it's doable. Like, it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what these teams are going to want to trade for, what they're going to want to, etc. But the one thing I will say when it comes to Sanders and Ward, and it's again, not everybody sees everything the same thing. What does TD always say? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But let me say this. If Sanders and Ward were generational can't-miss prospects, you would not be trading this pick. You would for sure be drafting one of these quarterbacks with the first pick. If the shoe was on the other foot, and if these guys were really not that good, then nobody's going to trade a haul in order to get up there and get those guys. Like, again, if you're trading a potential franchise quarterback pick, that would move heaven and earth. If they're taking a guy who might be okay, they're not going to do all that. Phone line streamed by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Rob says, let's be real. Are either of these two top quarterbacks, in fact, generational talents? I mean, come on. Stay at number one if you want to take the best player available. I bet a Brinks truck it's not a quarterback. Trade back if you want, but I don't think it's necessary. The Titans never have the defensive player that other teams worry about. The J.J. Watts twice a year taking sack selfies on our home field after murdering us. Let's get this first pick of the year, and let's not take a quarterback because it's a reach. I agree with you. If you don't think these guys are franchise quarterbacks, and I talked to a former general manager, and I said, what do you think of Sanders and Ward? And the former general manager texted back and said, yeah, I kind of like Ward. Says he got a lot to work on. I'm like, okay, that means that he does not look there and say, oh, man, I'll tell you, Ward is, he's legit. And let me say this. I talked to a former NFL general manager at the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And I said to this former general manager, I said, what do you make of all of this Will Levis first round talk? And the former general manager looked at me. Different guy than the one that liked Cam Ward. But he looked at me and he said, oh, I think he might go with the number one pick. I said, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, people I've talked to in the league, like he might go with the number one pick. And so, again, that was a loaded QB class. This is a terrible QB class, according to the draft gurus. But I do agree that if they're not generational quarterbacks, if you don't think that they're going to be in that class with Jaden Daniels and Patrick Mahomes, if you don't think that 3 years from now you can go to war with Cam Ward against Mahomes, don't take it. And you'll say, but Jared, you can't go to war with Sam Darnold against Mahomes. And that's true. But I'm also not saying take him with the first overall pick. I'm not saying pass on Travis Hunter or pass on Abdul Carter in order to get Sam Darnold. I'm saying give Sam Darnold some money, commit to him for a couple of years so you can get this thing off the ground, and then go find your guy that you can go to war against Mahomes with. One texter says, whose opinion do you trust on whether Cam Ward is the guy or not? Now, here's the deal. We're going to the Super Bowl next week. We're going to have a lot of people on the show, including Thomas Dimitrov, by the way, who interviewed for the Titans general manager position, which I find fascinating that he will be on our show. But we will talk to a lot of these people around the league this coming week at the Super Bowl. And I think there are some people there whose opinions I really value and I really would care about. By the way, Rich Gannon, very popular. Rich Gannon will be on our show next week. Michelle Beadle, last year, was very popular. Didn't know where that interview was going to go, but apparently she's going to be on the show next week. Malcolm Butler is going to be on the show next week. We are going to be freaking loaded.
Clean slate
at
with
the
a full
Super Bowl.
plate.
Clean slate with a full plate will be on our program live at the Super Bowl. You know, there was one real iffy one I wasn't sure to take when it came to picking him for the Super Bowl. Braden Narvison, the kicker, he's pumping something. I kind of want to know, like, how bad Colt Anderson was. So we're putting Braden Narvison on the show.
What do you think he'll
I
tell you
gotta
about?
know.
What do you think he'll tell us about that?
I have no idea. Here's the thing with some of these guys. Like, you have no idea what some of these guys are going to be like. You know, some of these guys, you sit down with them and you talk, and then you're like, wow, what a great interview. And then other guys you talk to, and it's like, holy smokes. I hope we get like, there are some guys that we've had over the years that, like, I'm like, I'm not going to say I want a carbon copy of the Super Bowl last year, though I thought our Super Bowl lineup last year was awesome. Like, there are some guys I really want on the show that we had last year. Like, Field Yates, I thought was excellent last year on the program. Warren Moon, I thought was excellent. You know, we loved listening to Warren Moon last year on the program. So there's some people from last year that I haven't booked yet that I'm like, man, these are some people that we probably need to throw on the show at some point. One texter says, Ward and Sanders are second rounders in any other year. I don't know if Ward would be. Again, they're saying that they're like Penix and Nix, and Penix and Nix went at 8 and 11, or 8 and 12 last year. So it's not like those guys went at 27 last year. You know, Kenny Pickett, you could argue, okay, he's a second or third rounder in another draft. But I don't think you can do that when guys are going at 12. And they say that these guys are kind of at the same level. Though Blake Bedingfield, whose opinion does matter. We need to get Blake Bedingfield on the show, Ian. I mean, we need to get Blake.
Sounds like it, yeah.
So Blake Bedingfield says second round grade on Shedeur Sanders, which does concern me. And I do value Blake's opinion because he's been right about a lot. By the way, I did hear somebody call Robbie and Rexro the other day, and they said that the right tackle situation last year, that I was prophetic. I did appreciate that. I'm not going to lie. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, Stillman and Company. Hal Gill going to join us. Predators keep losing, but I'll say this. Ian, I don't know if Hal's ready for the rage that I have.
I'll try and prepare him.
Don't prepare him. Just let him go. 1025 the game.
Still playing 5-on-5 as the puck comes over to the right half wall. Juuse knocked down, and the puck goes into the empty net from Suter. And the Canucks take a 2-goal lead with 17.3 to go.
So I gotta say, again, the way the season's going, nobody expected this. I certainly didn't expect this, but they kind of got hot there for a second, and I thought, okay, maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a chance that the Predators could get themselves back into this. The last two, Arizona and now Vancouver, I think have kind of sealed the deal. So the Predators are on their way, or I guess they probably already are in Buffalo, where they'll play tomorrow night. Hal Gill joins us on the program. Hal, I'm not happy.
Are you ever?
But here's what my issue is. My issue is not with the team. The team stinks. The season has not gone in the direction that we expected it to go. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the coach. And you know me, Hal, I'm quick to fire coaches, but I'm fine with the coach. Even if they get the number 1 pick and they run it back with him next year. Now, if they start off the way they started off this year, then you got to fire him. But I'm fine with the coach, fine with the general manager, fine with the overall direction of the team. Even the kind of the older guys they brought in here to be impact players, I just think it's going to take a little bit longer. But here's what I'm not okay with, Hal. The goalie. The goalie does not even have a .900 save percentage right now. The goalie is allowing 2.86 goals per game, up from the 2.69 that he was allowing 2 years ago. He leads the league in losses and in overtime losses. And I got to say, for a guy that this franchise has given that contract to, there is no way out of it. And we are stuck with him for the next 8 years. And Hal, I'm tired of the excuses. He's never won a playoff series. He just doesn't steal enough games anymore. I'm worried about the goalie, and I'm worried. Not only am I worried that he's not that good, Hal, I'm worried there's nothing they can do about it. Your thoughts?
Okay. I have to tiptoe around this, I guess, with you, because I know you're going to slam anything I say right back in my face. But I think you have to look at his body of work and what he's done. And I think he's an elite level goaltender. I think he's one of the best in the league. He is slumping. He's not himself right now. As an athlete, and especially with goalies, I think you have a little injury and you favor it, and it changes your game a little bit. You lose a little confidence, and then you start to slump, and then you're not quite the same, and you don't have that same jump. And we're talking a matter of like, if you're just a hair off, you're way off, right? As a goaltender. And I know it as a player, like, okay, you cheat a little bit here. You kind of get through a few games, but then you start to lose your swagger and it's not quite the same. And your game kind of takes a downturn. And I think that's what Juuse has gone through. I do believe in him. I think he's one of the fastest goalies technically. I think he's one of the best where he can move efficiently and get from spot to spot. And I don't see him doing that. He used to, he'd be at the top of the crease and he'd just lock it down right on the post. He could move laterally faster than anyone. And I think you could see that when he was younger, and you could see when he was doing that. And now I think his game, he understands the game better, but he's just a little bit off, and it's costing him. And so I think he's got to work through this. But I think you're off in the fact that, he's got a long contract, and it's really a great deal for what he has done. His body of work is, he took less money to stay in Nashville. And I think he wants to be part of this team. He likes it here, but I think he's going to be great. I think you have to be patient with it, because I think all it takes is one thing to click, and then another thing comes with it, and then he starts to feel good, and then he starts to get the steals that he had in the past. And I think you have to just kind of sit through that and wait through that, because he's going to come around. And it's similar to the team, the way the team has gone. And so, I know you wait till I get off the air, and then you're going to say whatever you want to say.
but I just want people to be patient. Pecorine went through hip surgery. He wasn't playing all that great, and he went through hip surgery, and he came back and won a Vezina. And I think that it's just the ebbs and flows of being a goaltender are magnified, but every player goes through that.
I actually am appreciative of what you just said, and I'm going to tell you why, Hal. Because you did not try to obfuscate his performance. Like, you did not say, no, he's actually playing well, but the guys in front of him are letting him down, or, oh, it's a team sport, or, oh, you didn't do that. Because I've been getting a lot of that lately, which is, oh, it's not his fault. And it seems to never be his fault, Hal. But I will give you credit for saying, like, hey, he's not playing well enough. Here's my thing, though, when you say, hey, he's an elite goalie, and we got to be patient, and he became the starting goalie of this team in 2020. It is 2025. He has not won a playoff series yet. And I understand that there are other players on the ice, not just the goalie, but we would be murdering an NFL quarterback if we were saying that's an elite quarterback and he hasn't won a playoff game in all this time. I mean, at some point, doesn't an elite goalie have to win a playoff series because he's an elite goalie, Hal?
Yeah, well, you're always measured by your wins and your losses. It doesn't matter how good you are, but I do think one of my favorite things is talk to his teammates, talk to people around that play against him and play with him, and they'll tell you, like, he's nowhere, and then all of a sudden he's right in front of you, and he's a hard goalie to score on. Like, all these things that players talk about, I have to trust in the players. The players trust talk to all the guys on the team. They trust Juuse. They know Juuse is awesome. So I think there's a belief in that. And, the quarterback example is a good example. You have to win. There's no doubt if Juuse wants to go in the Hall of Fame someday, he's going to have to win. He's going to have to bring this team through the playoffs. And, if he wants to be remembered as a great goaltender, you have to win. There's no doubt about that. But I think there's a belief in him. And I think that's sometimes what you're looking for a quarterback is belief. The team believes in you and they're going to rally around you, going to play for you. And I think that's what Juuse has. Now he's got to make it work. I'm not letting him off the hook. Absolutely, he needs to win. But I don't think this, you're talking about, Juuse right now. The team has not played well the last couple of games. And I do think Anaheim, he gave up a bad goal. I didn't like that first goal, and I'm sure he didn't like it either. And that might have cost the game, hey, let's be honest. He might have cost the game. But I think he made a big save last night that led to a tying goal, made it 1-1, and it was a huge save. And that was a big save that could have turned that game around, and the Preds didn't turn it around, and that's on them. But Juuse did his part. And so I think a lot of guys believe in what he's doing and that they believe he can take them there. So I do think you're right. Eventually, all said and done, but right now, you got to look at what he is and what he's capable of. And I think he's capable of big things. And so I'll buy stock in him right now. I know the stock is low, but I'm buying it. And I think he's ready to take it to the next level. He's just got to get through this funk. And let's be honest, everyone has a downturn. I know, Jared, you're fire on the air every day, but, in the real world, to us mere mortals, you have some downturns and you're not always on top of your game, and you have to work through that, and that makes you better in the end.
But aren't you paid when you're UC Saros, Hal Gill with us? Aren't you paid to not have a down season? Because this is a down season.
Yes.
I mean, you're like, hey, some games aren't going to be your best games. He's 8.99 for the season, Hal.
I've ever heard. You don't pay an athlete and expect the same thing every time. You're like, how good would it be for GMs if they could say, this is what I'm going to get from this guy every game, and I'm going to go forward with that?
How
great
he's got
would
an
that be?
8.99 save percentage.
wouldn't you be the best GM ever? Who wouldn't be the best GM ever if you could just say, I'm going to pay this guy and he's going to do that. And you know what? I used to tell my coaches, like if Mario Lemieux beat me, I would say, you know what? He makes $7 million and I make $1 million. So if you want me to stop him, you're going to have to pay me $7 million. Is that how it works? Right? Is that how it works? Like,
well, here's what I will tell you. Unfortunately, if I was the general manager of this
ebbs and
team, Hal,
flows.
if I was the general manager of this team, Juuse Saros would not be the goalie, because after the Vancouver series last year, I was like, look, he is what he is. He's probably above average. You keep saying elite. I don't believe that. I think he's an above average goalie, but I think he's closer to Kevin Lankinen, and I think he's closer to this new goalie from Colorado, who I actually kind of like, this Juuse Annanen or whatever. I actually kind of like him, but I think he's closer to them than he was to Pekka Rinne at Pekka Rinne's peak. And that is, if I was the general manager, Juuse Saros would have been packing his bags and he'd be gone, because I don't think you can win with him.
With all due respect, Jared, stay in your lane. You had me on the show to tell you what I thought about hockey, and I know a lot more than you do. And hey, listen,
I know
goaltending is a whole different story. If you want to talk goaltending, get Chris Mason here, and he'll tell you all about goaltending. We have plenty of people, but I'm telling you right now, I know a lot more. So you had me on the show to tell you what I think. If you want to trade him, become a GM and do it, Jared. But right now, I'm telling you, Juuse is a good goaltender. He's on a downturn, no doubt. He's not playing as well as he could. He's an elite goaltender, and that's the bottom line. And I can't wait for him to shove it right in your face. And I can't wait to hear this conversation played back. I know you won't do it. But I'd love to see Juuse go out there and just turn you around and bury you with great performance after great performance.
See, here's the difference between here's the difference, Hal, between, and I love you, but here's the difference between what you think of me and what the truth of me is. What you think is, you think that I want to be right so badly so I can say, I was right, that you think I will root for him to lose. The opposite is true. I want my team to be good. I want to be wrong. I want him to win the Conn Smythe after the Predators win the Cup, and when some guy who's working for the network named Pierre sticks a microphone in his face.
You just said you were going to get rid of him.
I would have, because I don't believe in him. What I want to have happen and what I think is going to happen are two totally different things. I want him to be good because I want my team to win. I just don't think it's going to happen. But you think I want to be right more than I want the Preds to win.
No, you just want to light a fire under me. You just want to get me going. I can tell it. I'm hot. I'm feeling that vibe right now. You just want to push my button, and you did. I respect you for doing that. You're running a great radio program, but I think Barry Trotz and company are trying to run a hockey team, and I think they've made great decisions. And I think signing Juuse Saros was one of them, and I trust that he's going to do it. And hey, you're a hockey guy now. Apparently, you're going to be the GM, and you're going to do whatever you want. Whether you send Juuse packing or not. I just can't wait for him to shove it right in your grill.
He's Hal Gill, and he approves this message. Hal, great stuff as always. This is one of the more fun one of these. As always, take care of yourself, Hal.
Yeah, you're a beauty. You know what? Somehow I come out of this respecting you, and I'm not sure how that happened, but well done. Well done. You got me going. I needed that juice in my veins right now, so thank you. Appreciate
Hal,
it.
do you want to be on the show next week when we have Mike Felger on at the Super Bowl?
No, I'll pass on that. Tell Mike I said hi, though.
I will.
You know what? Though, Jared, that was someone I was really happy that I shoved it right back in his grill. He put me down and he counted me out, and I used it as fuel. And I hope Juuse does the same for you, and then we can laugh about it at the end of the day.
Well, I believe Saros and I do live close to each other, so that's something you can say, hey, that guy at the grocery store, let him know. Hal Gill, as always on our program. Great stuff, Hal.
All right. Cheers, bud.
Yep. Hal Gill joining us on the show. One of my favorite stories with Hal is that when I met Hal, Hal didn't know the Juuse at the time, coming from the show, but he said, I think every town needs a guy like you who just, kind of keeps it. I said, yeah, Mike Felger in Boston, because I was a young pup in New Hampshire when I got into Boston. He said, oh, I hate that guy. I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of how I mold the game a little bit. 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company, 125 the game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They have done that since 2018, and I'm not changing anytime soon. Hiller has been in business since 1990, and they are family owned and operated. And Jimmy Hiller was recently named amongst the most admired CEOs. Why? Because of the way he truly cares for his team and his clients. And I know this because I know Jimmy Hiller, and I use Hiller at my home. Hiller has 100% satisfaction. If happy you'll be here, the service is free. And if a customer is not pleased with the work that is performed, they will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds of Falls and Vandy. Hiller, call that fish truck today. Stillman and company, tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vandy women's basketball. Vandy and Florida set to do battle in 7 minutes on 94.9 The Fan. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. Vandy women's basketball presented by Athletes Unlimited. Pro basketball coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium February 5th through March 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets. It was announced today that Bill Haslam and his wife are set to make a bid for a WNBA team. The Tennessee Summit would be the name of the WNBA team, and they would be playing at Bridgestone Arena. And Peyton Manning is on board, part of the ownership group, and Tim McGraw and Faith Hill are on board for part of the ownership group. Now, I figured it was like a slam dunk that we were going to get a WNBA team if all those heavy hitters are on board, but apparently it's going to be very competitive with some of these other markets to get a WNBA team. Let me say this. I'm all for it. I'm all for the WNBA. The WNBA is a league on the rise. And I remember when I first started, and I mean, I'm looking right now at a women's basketball national runner-up banner, you know, because I was with that Louisville squad in 2009. And I remember when I got into women's basketball, and I'm like, this is a fun sport. I don't care. And Caitlin Clark has brought women's basketball more to the mainstream, and now the ticket prices are through the roof, and the TV ratings are through the roof for women's basketball, and I think it's great. So I hope it works out for them. I mean, I know that with those guys in charge of a team, you'll have the money right, and that's really the number one thing people care about, but it's going to be very competitive for them to be able to get that bid. I hope they get it. And I would be excited about it, and I think it would be well run. Again, not to poo-poo anything here. I think the name is a little dorky. You know, the tipping the cap to Pat Summitt, like, oh, we got to name the team after her. Again, that's the only thing I don't necessarily like, but everything else, totally cool with. Very excited. Hope they get it. Bill Haslam, right guy as far as the money's concerned, and everything else to be able to get a team here. That's it for us. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.